appreciate you coming out, and those that are joining us online, we appreciate your watching and joining with us. I'd like to call this meeting of the Mills River Planning Board to order for September 3rd, 2024. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, our first order of business. Before we do that, the chair would like to express our condolences to Mr. Kimsey in the loss of his father. I had the pleasure of knowing Mr. Kimsey when I was at Mills River Elementary, and I always remember him as a big man. It was a very, very nice man, and my class just always enjoyed when he came in because he was just such a nice guy when he come in to visit. So our thoughts and prayers are with you, but you've got a daddy to be proud of, and he's got a son he can be proud of. Okay, I'd like to ask if there is a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Is there a second?
Second.
And thank you, Mr. Foster. All in favor of approving the agenda?
Aye.
All right. And then we've had our minutes from the last meeting, and hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at those. If there are any additions or corrections or any questions, now's the time. Otherwise, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the August 6th meeting.
Make the motion.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Oliver. We have a motion.
Second.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Cole. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, public comment. We're glad to have a group of people with us here tonight, a group of citizens that are concerned enough to be here, and we really appreciate that. I just can't tell you how much it means to us. We're up here trying to think about what's best for the community, and we all have our viewpoints and different ways of looking at things, and it really helps to hear from people that will be affected. So we really appreciate you being here.
None signed up.
Okay, no one signed up. Do we have any email comments? Okay.
This email came from Allison and Jim, and it is, Michael, my husband and I have lived in Mills River for 24 years in 2 different locations. We have watched many of the town council and planning meetings online, as well as attending a few. I know that you are looking for community feedback, and I am not as comfortable speaking at the meetings as I am expressing my thoughts in writing to be shared with the council and the committee. As you all consider all of the factors relating to zoning, I would like the planning board and town council to keep in mind that there are small pockets of old neighborhoods greatly impacted by the neighboring zoned area. When one of these old neighborhoods is currently in an area zoned multi-use / multi-purpose, and then all or part of that area is zoned commercial or industrial, it leaves that small older neighborhood very vulnerable and subject to a great decrease in property value. I would like to ask that time and effort be put forth to assure that these neighborhoods are either zoned as residential and/or ensure that the commercial or industrial standards include a sufficient buffer to those neighborhoods. Just one example of such neighborhoods is the one in which we live on Clement Drive. When we purchased our home, the view out of the back was onto a small old farm, but the view now is the back wall of Lowe's distribution center. While the developer was very good to work with in terms of sensitivity to the immediate neighbors, and it was tastefully designed, it was surprising to see that could happen right at our property lines. We are also impacted by the neighboring industrial park off of Brandy Branch Road and are aware that there will soon be more development bordering property lines. Thank you very much for your consideration, your time, and your efforts.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Now is time for new business. This is R 24-01, request for conditional rezoning 232 Brown Ridge Road, Northwood Raven. So Mr. Malichat,
Sure, I'll just give a quick summary of the development proposal, and then I'd like to turn it over to the applicant, because I believe they've prepared a number of new exhibits to present, a new conditions list for the conditional zoning district, and also had responses to some of the planning board questions we collected and emailed to the applicant. We did print a version of those and passed that out earlier. So again, the subject property is located behind Amazon at 232 Brown Ridge Road. It's about 75 acres. And the proposed conditional zoning district development is for a multifamily development and up to 65 residential buildings, up to 290 dwelling units at a density of 4 units per acre, plus customary accessory buildings and uses, a clubhouse, leasing office, and other uses and features shown on the preliminary master plan. All the development will be in accordance with the town's multifamily development standards and normal standards, except for what is contained in the conditional district description. Right now, and this is on the old one, so I'll let the applicant present the new conditional district description after this, but previously we were considering the following deviations, which again are allowed through the conditional zoning process from our normal development standards. So maximum building height is proposed at 45 feet. That's a 10-foot difference from the standard. Minimum separation between buildings is 20 feet. That's a 10-foot difference from the standard. Parking should not be required to set back from building walls. That's a 10-foot difference from the standard. Setbacks for residential lots will comply with the standards. The building setback from Boylston Highway at the northeast property corner will be 20 feet. That's a 10-foot reduction from the setback. I believe we talked about that specific building at the last meeting. And the development may install a maximum of 3 monument signs, which is actually the same as the standard town allowance. So again, I'm happy to elaborate on anything else in the staff report or stuff we've discussed previously, but I think the best way to move forward, it's the chair's pleasure, is to have the applicant come up and present the new materials.
does the board have any comments or questions? If not,
Mr. Chairman, I have one comment during the discussion tonight on this particular project. I would like for us to, I know we've already had a couple of comments section, but if there is anyone in the audience that would like to comment during the discussion, could we do that?
yeah, I don't see any reason why we couldn't. We'll open up for public comment after the developer makes a presentation and we have a chance as a board to discuss. Thank you for that. Okay, would the applicant like to present?
Hello again. My name is Jesse Swords. I'm an attorney with Allen Stahl and Kilbourne. And I'm here with Kyle Whitaker from Northwood Raven, David Coslett, land use planner and landscape architect with RVI. And I believe that's the extent of our team today. I just want to start with just a recap. This is the first CZ application in the town of Mills River. I'm proud to be a part of that. I'm proud to be a part of this team. There has been a lot of homework and consideration that's gone into this project at this stage. That is rare, but this team has really done this right, in my opinion. This project provides great benefits to the town, additional housing, additional tax base, responsible development, while minimizing the impact on the town's character because of the unique location. Residential is a reduced impact from the light industrial zoning that it currently is, and it's a unique site kind of on the outskirts of town behind the Amazon warehouse, not exactly front and center. So last time we discussed adding additional buffer protection along 280, and I asked for written questions that we could respond to. Y'all have the response to the written questions. I thought they would make their way to you sooner, but I didn't send them to Mike until Friday, so he chose to print them out here rather than try to email them over the long weekend, which makes sense. So we got two emails from Mike. One was like a recap of the discussion on from the previous meeting. We got that the next day after the meeting. And then we got some additional questions emailed to us, I think on the 16th. So Mike's email was mostly responding with, the changes to the conditions that I drafted. I'm not sure if you have those in your packet. And also the additional exhibits that we prepared that we're going to present tonight. I also sent a memo about consideration of school capacity and zoning decisions, which Mike requested. Did you all get that one? The memo was not included?
Memo was not.
Okay. We may need to pull up the conditions then, the changes, to the conditions at some point. Let's see. So also, I just want to, from the highlights of Mike's presentation, I want to talk about the height a little bit. So we're asking for 45 feet, which is up from, the 35-foot standard for multifamily. But the base standard for MR30, I think is it 50? Yeah. So it's 5 feet less than the base standard. And then I think for light industrial, it's either, is it 55? 80. Okay. So in any case, it's lower than kind of the base zoning that we're talking about. And, we had a discussion with the architect about this. The request for the additional height is actually to kind of preserve the ability to have peaked roofs, which is in character with the area. Anything less and we'd be risking going to flat roofs, which wouldn't be as aesthetically pleasing and all that stuff. So that was some good insight for me that I wanted to pass along to you. Second, I want to talk about the setback from 280. Our previous discussions were about, a 20-foot setback from the property line. In the ordinance, there's kind of a generally applicable 75-foot setback from Boylston Highway. That's actually measured from a point 12 feet in to the pavement. So we're at a minimum of 20 feet from the property line that's adjacent to Boylston Highway, but and David can speak to this more. I think we're more like 130 feet from Boylston. So we're almost doubling the kind of the default setback to Boylston. With that, I'll have David come up and explain the new buffer exhibit. And then I think Kyle will talk through the Miles View Drive exhibit. Of course, this isn't going to work. Yeah, it's just pages 2 and 3 of the slides.
Good evening, everybody, and good to see y'all again. As he gets this slide up, we have come with some, I think we need another, are you still working on trying to get it up? Technical difficulties. Okay. So this is our new exhibit that we're here to talk about today. I'm going to grab my printout so I can give you some dimensions. So what we're showing here is in response to some of the comments that we received in the last two presentations about buffering from Boylston Highway. The darker green kind of vegetated tree cover is what's existing on our site. There's a lighter green that also shows, since there was some discussion about, if in worst case scenario, if NCDOT were to come and clear cut anything on inside the right of way, what would be left over for screening of our property and our residential. So as you can see, there's two different greens. The light green is what's off our site. The darker green is what's on our site. And so you can see that much of our development will continue to be screened, buffered from Boylston Highway, even if, again, worst case scenario, NCDOT were to ever come and clear cut the right of way. The other thing that we had discussed was providing a double buffer along Boylston Highway. So what you're seeing there in the purple that goes all the way along the Boylston right of way is our proposed 20-foot wide as opposed to 10, which would be code required. So 20 foot. And then I have a detail also that would show double the plant material. Did that sheet make it in there too? Next page. Yeah, so on the top there where you see the orange and the blue, lines next to the number 1, that is the typically provided or required buffer. So it's evergreen trees on a 20-foot on-center spacing, and then a dense hedgerow at a 5-foot spacing. What we are proposing to help with the screening is a double buffer. So not only going 20-foot wide, but also doubling the plant material contained within said buffer. And that would be along Boylston Highway, where the screening would be impacted up to our property line by clearing or grading on our site. Okay, so then the other thing that we talked about was, can you get me back to the other one? Thank you. All right, so the other thing that we were responding to is on our southern boundary where we're up against residential. There is no buffer required between residential and residential, but to hear our concerned neighbors, we are proposing a 10-foot wide buffer with the 20-foot on center evergreen trees and a 5-foot hedge all along that southern boundary where we bump up against those existing residences and the place, the property that potentially gets rezoned, but right now it is MR30. So again, this graphic is meant to show two different things: how much vegetation is existing on site that will continue to screen our property from Boylston, and then the additional buffering that we are going to provide along Boylston and our southern boundary. I will take any questions or chat through any of this stuff as necessary.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, ma'am, we can't, that's okay. And we will, yes, ma'am, we'll be glad to hear from you. Are there any questions?
I do have dimensions on here too, very, very hard to read, but kind of going, let's go from east to west. I have 60 feet from edge of pavement to property boundary, 133 feet from existing roadway to property boundary, another 60 feet, 103, 140, 92, another 60, and 88. So again, we've talked a lot about distance from Boylston, both horizontal and vertical. The one we showed last week was the vertical, how we are set up above with existing vegetation between us. So this is very much in line with what the code asks for and pushes well beyond that, even to our property boundary. So again, if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Hello, setbacks again from Boylston Highway.
To our property boundary or to the actual buildings? Which one would you like?
From the building
To Boylston. Yeah. So the closest building, which is the one on the far east that kind of sticks its nose out into there, That building is 130 feet from its closest point to Boylston Highway. 130 feet.
Just to clarify, those are the red lines on the top, and that's to the asphalt, not to a right of way.
That's to the asphalt, yes,
Okay.
which is generally how the code reads, is that 75 foot, and that's not even factoring in the 12 that they also give.
Just making sure for Jim's
Mhm.
question
Is
that I understand that that's what you were asking was from asphalt.
Is
Not from
it
the property.
possible to zoom in on, are you, I don't know if it is,
Can
but
you zoom into the?
is it possible, just because it's really, really hard to see?
Each of those red lines are the dimensions he just,
Yeah,
I know it might, yeah, I mean, I don't want to crash the system.
Yeah, I was talking about from the property.
that's why I'm
building
clarifying, because I didn't
asphalt.
get the sense, yeah.
you want to know property line
Oh,
to
from the-
asphalt.
Building
Building.
the asphalt.
Building to asphalt is 130 feet.
130 feet.
Because you do have both up there.
I do.
Is why.
I do.
Okay.
So on the east side, the closest building is 130 feet. I've also dimensioned the next closest building, which is also 140 feet. So the closest building is the one that sticks up where that right of way comes really close into our site. And then the next closest building is 140 feet from edge of asphalt to the closest corner of that building.
Huh.
Oh, there we go. Look at that. I don't know if that's easier to read for you. I also have a printout if that
I would
helps.
love to see the print. Thank you.
And that's the.
The
buffer
buffering,
that
yeah.
matters here.
Oh, thank you.
That's the double buffer
It
versus
makes it-
what's required per code.
This is also going to be
And
quite a
that's
bit
must be the
higher than the
edge of
road.
the-
There's a
Correct,
pretty good
Correct.
grade difference.
correct. I'm assuming that slide is in here also, if it's worth bringing that back up.
Was that vertical at
So,
45?
yeah, these are the closest.
The drawings with the vertical, the perspective from Boylston. So you shake your head, yeah, that was at 45? Right, but it showed the max.
Yes,
So that's, and the Amazon building would be like here. So there's a stoplight there.
I don't have control over it.
Part of the plan.
Yeah, right. I think we got rid of it to make this one pop up better. All right, anything else I can answer for the board here?
Here's, well, no, I don't know if you need,
You'll, we'll look at this.
you're good.
Okay, I think we're good.
Okay,
Any
well, I'll
questions?
let Jesse or Kyle continue on here.
I can talk a little bit about Miles View Drive. I don't know which page that exhibit's on. But for a little context, Miles View Drive is the road on the south, existing 20-foot easement to connect to the adjacent property owner who spoke last time, but I don't see him here this evening. We had some discussions with him after that meeting, and have proposed some ways that we can make that work with the grading of our side and theirs as well. We've got an exhibit that we'll get to here shortly as one proposed option. Not finalized yet because we still have to work through with their design and our engineering, but kind of how we're proposing to look at it from a condition standpoint for the purposes of tonight is a commitment and a condition to ensure that Miles View Drive is brought up to brought up to fire standards. So 22, 23-foot wide clearance for fire truck access. But an exhibit, I think if we might have to zoom out just a little bit.
And that'll be a hard surface.
That's correct.
Hard
Yes,
surface.
yeah. So fire truck access to make sure we got it. And this, you can kind of see the existing 20-foot easement. I think if I press the top one, that's the.
It's not gonna work.
Okay. Gotcha. But kind of flattening that out, not going as close, getting rid of that really sharp turn that goes towards the southern property line and kind of flattening that out and tying in to the property boundary on the east there. So once again, still have to work through the details of that with them as we get into engineering, finalize an adjustment to the easement that provides that through access. But the condition that we've talked about adding would be a condition to make sure that is brought up to fire. I believe we worded it that basically per the fire marshal's requirements for that fire truck access in and out there, which should cover also any vehicular access that's needed there.
Okay.
So you're proposing the only way in and out be Miles View Drive.
No, sir, there's also an entrance up near Amazon as well. So there's two entrances.
This one on the Miles View, the 20-foot right away.
It's currently the 20-foot. The 20-foot right of way is for connection to the adjacent property to the east. So that's the 20-foot piece that kind of, you can see the dash line there that's got 20 foot that kind of bends down to the bottom of the page right by the property line and then back up. So what we're proposing now is we would adjust that right of way for their access and for ours.
But this is the right of way that through the existing property.
I say right of way, that's probably the wrong term to use. So let me back that up. It's not actually gonna be public right of way.
It's an
It's
easement.
access.
It's
easement.
the easement.
It's an
at
easement.
present.
That's right. That's right. It's a
But
20-foot access.
The
easement.
Miles View Drive that runs down to the other road. Much of a drive now. What do you propose for it?
In terms of the existing road through the property? Is that the question or?
Yes, sir. If I understand, there's currently an easement for the property owner that would, to us, is down to the lower right. What you're doing is you're creating a hard surface drive that will support firefighting operations in
Correct.
accordance with the fire code. It'll also serve as a secondary access. And it was called out in the traffic impact analysis as having some traffic sent there.
That's exactly right.
From where that ends at the hammerhead, we'd call it in
Mhm.
the T turnaround. From there to the end of the property is still going to be an access for that property owner.
Correct.
And it will have at least some improvement, but that property owner also,
Yes.
Has-
Our intent with this exhibit is we would just do it all the way through.
so
That
you're going to
23
give them a
foot.
20-foot
Yeah.
all the way.
Well, it would
up
end up
to the-
being a little bit more in that easement
Sure.
to make that 23-foot wide curb to curb work for fire access.
Up to the property line.
That's right.
And then from there, they have what
They would
they have
take it
now,
from there. That's right.
but they get a hard surface up to where the property line ends.
Correct. That's right.
And I'm
wide-
assuming
And wide.
Any snow operations that you're going to do any snow removal you're going to have to do for your access anyway, they might benefit
Mhm.
from that
Correct.
some. Does that make sense?
And I
Mr. Foster, is that,
just
does that
wanted,
answer the question? Yes.
I just wanted to point out that the easement is for the benefit of the property owner to the east. So we're not limited to 20 feet. They have to have at least 20 feet of access. That's their right under this easement. But we are not limited to 20 feet when we build this road. We can do whatever the fire marshal needs us to do.
Because it's on your property.
That's right. And as long as
I mean,
we
the property
provide
for
at
the
least 20
development, of
feet
course.
for the property owner to the east, we can do what's needed.
Would the
Yes, sir.
other road access be 20 feet off?
I don't know.
Road up by Amazon. Is that correct? Yes, they would all have to be brought up or installed per fire requirements, which I believe is 22 foot, I think is minimum. So 2 11-foot wide travel lanes. But I think what we have shown here is 23 foot.
Okay, are there any other questions?
I think it would, Mr. Chair, this is your meeting, but I think it would make sense for any public comment to happen before the board discussion so that
I'm
we
fine
can
with that.
respond.
Sure.
Um,
And for the benefit of our friends that are here tonight, we don't normally like to have back and forth between, the audience. And it's so much better if we have the opportunity for us. You may say something that triggers something with us, and of course, the developer will be glad to answer your questions. It's, so that's why, please don't think we're being rude and we say, just wait just a minute. So, and that's why. So at this time, if any public comment, if anyone would like to ask any questions, and we will try to keep it to 3 minutes. It's unusual to do this during this portion, but like Mr. Foster said, in this case, it makes sense So if we do have anyone that would like to ask a question, ma'am, please give us your name.
Yes.
Yes, we'd like that because then we've got it on record. When we do the minutes aren't necessarily verbatim because if they were, especially when sometimes I get on a soapbox or something and my wife's back there, so she'll give me the, Jeff, I really enjoy what you're saying signal. And, but, maybe I've been misinterpreting that. But anyway, so our minutes may not capture everything that can be captured in our video and our archives. So
I don't think I need 3 minutes. My name is Donna Catton Johnson. I live on I live in on Amywood Lane inside of Sweetwater Road.
yes, ma'am.
And my earlier question was just going to be where was 280 on that because I couldn't see it very well. So now I
Yes,
know.
ma'am. Thank you.
My big question right now is, and I don't know if this development has begun work or anything, all that green we saw, where the buildings are going to go inside the green, is that or was that all forest at one point?
Thank you for that. Yes, ma'am. Well,
Okay,
we'll
that's
be,
my
we'll
comment.
asking, yes,
That's my
we'll
comment.
let them talk about that. And I think that they have committed to saving as many trees as they can.
Yeah.
So. Yes, ma'am. Okay, any other questions? Okay, now for the board. Do we have any more questions? If not, we'll invite the applicant back up to answer that question.
I was wondering if all of the materials, it sounded like there was a gap between some of the materials that you prepared for this meeting. And have we now seen everything that you wanted to share with us or answer the questions that were?
I was gonna suggest we put up the new conditions
Yeah,
document.
that's a good idea. I prepared a kind of a revised set of conditions. They have the two staff requested conditions, which are the developer shall provide a pedestrian sidewalk from the site to the Broad Point Drive signal for future connection to the Mills River Valley Trail. And the developer shall construct a southbound turn lane on Fanning Fields Road at Miles View Drive within the existing road right of way. I have added to that, both related to the exhibits we've shown. The first one is landscape buffering above the town's base requirements shall be provided where an equivalent buffer is not provided by the existing vegetation that is on our property. As indicated on the exhibit. And just as a reminder, the exhibit shows a double 10-foot buffer. So one of the buffers in the town code is the 10-foot buffer. We're doubling that and staggering it so it becomes a better, thicker, better buffer. The other condition I added is Miles View Drive shall be brought up to fire safety standards as determined by the fire marshal. And exhibit, whatever number it ends up being, provides an illustrative example with details subject to change based on the final easement negotiations with the neighboring property owner. And as for the public comment, we do have a slide that shows the existing vegetation. And David, if you want to, let me confirm with him.
Sure.
If you could put 10, slide 10.
So it's my understanding that you're going to use existing where you can.
Yes.
You're not going to cut down a tree to plant a tree.
No.
So-
That is not.
So
that is
that's,
certainly
in
not-
case anyone's curious, you are providing it. But
So
if
to your
it's
point,
already there,
there is a good portion of the property that is forested, but there also is quite a few horse pastures and there's multiple residences and Airbnbs and stuff on there. So it's not like, excuse me, the whole site is wooded. There's a lot of development on there already. We're just trying to fit our density within a nice existing vegetated buffer.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
okay.
I do have a
We can
question.
leave it.
We do have, yes, come on up, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Donna Brown. I live in Mills River on Holly Haven Court. been here for just over a year, come from a place in Florida where when we first moved there, we were there for 34 years, but when we first moved there, had a great elementary school across the street. And within 10 years, we had 30 portables across the street because the impact of high density housing coming into the area. So my question is, how many homes are we looking at here? What do you think is going to be the amount of children and how is that going to impact the school system we have right now, which is fabulous, by the way. I have a 7-year-old in Mills River Elementary School. Love that school. Principal's amazing. So that's my question.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. As a planning board and as part of this procedure, we're really not able to consider the impacts to a school. I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive, but the area, the multifamily zoning is 4 units per acre. And that's what's been established for multifamily. As far as the number of children that will live there, it's really hard to speculate. A substantial amount of the units are 1 bedroom. So most likely those would not have school-age children. There are a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms that are proposed. The superintendent, I believe, or the principal, we had a meeting where a superintendent came, someone from the Henderson County Public Schools, and they said, bring all the kids you can, we'll handle them. Now, that's hearsay. I was here when they said that, but the county will basically, they will take care of, they will handle the kids that come in. And for us as a planning board, unfortunately, that's not within what we are, within our jurisdiction, basically. We're not allowed to consider that.
But 289 units, right? 289 units
280?
is part of your question.
280, if you'd like to talk
I can
about.
add to it. And Ms. Marino, your question, do you have everything? I don't think you got the memo that I sent about school capacity. But to just kind of recap the memo and provide the common sense part of it rather than the legalese part of it. First, the mechanism for school planning is almost entirely at the state level, and it is designed to adapt, to changes in student population, which are not easily predictable, based on a plan of a residential development. You just don't know how many students are going to move in there. So the state handles that, and they have a process for that. The second thing I wanted to add was I looked at the Henderson County Comprehensive Plan. They just did their 2045 comprehensive plan. And in there, there's a note about schools, and it says the North Carolina Office of State Budget and Management forecasts that there will be a demand for an additional 19,000 housing units over the next 30 years in Henderson County as a whole. Now, obviously, the public schools will have to adapt to that 30,000 additional homes. And so compared to our 290, that provides, I think, some common sense perspective about whether this housing development could really challenge the public schools, in a meaningful way. I think they can take it in stride. So those are kind of 2 common sense points for the memo.
Thank you very much. Yes, as a board within our area that we can look at, if we stray from that, we are, it's really not, it doesn't put the town in a good situation if we stray from what we're able to look at. We do have our own opinions, and I definitely encourage discussion and give your opinions and and all that. We just have to be careful if there's an area that we're not allowed to consider, and that's the same on the Board of Adjustments. We have to be careful. I would definitely caution someone saying, well, I know I'm not supposed to think about this, but look out, because when we go past that word but and look at it anyway, we're getting ourselves in trouble. So,
I also want to mention that we're scheduling a call or a meeting with is it the superintendent's school board? Working on scheduling that hopefully for next week. But in any event, you know, we'll have their insight by the time we get to town council.
sounds good.
And if I could just add
Sure.
I had a call with some of the higher up in the school system over a month ago, so that they are aware of this development and that it's before the town.
So it's we generally let them know what's coming in as far as development
Permit.
there.
There's no,
Permitted.
there's no standard process
No
for
process.
that. But as the issue's been raised publicly in the county, there's more awareness of it.
Okay, thank you. Excellent. Yeah, we do have a wonderful school system. I know some great teachers who I'm surprised were still teachers after they had me. And I still apologize to Mrs. Britton for how mean I was in the 6th grade, but thank God for her patience. And so anyway, thank you. Okay. That being
I
said,
did have a question.
yes,
On question number 1, and it wasn't sent by me, but it says, but as you know, I'm not generally in favor of this project as presented, but an alternative comes to mind. Would the applicants consider changing this project to a condo type development where the units would be sold to individuals and controlled by a local homeowners association, which I assume they would build equity as well? But the response, there wasn't a response. It was just that, well, there was a response, but it just says that North Carolina law does not allow zoning to regulate the form of ownership, but I don't think that was the question. I think the question was, would the applicants consider changing the project, not the legality of
The
zoning?
impression of us steering them towards a different request is the concern.
right. I think we would be, again, we would be in some uncomfortable area if we suggest, if that's something that, you know, our vote, our approval of the project can't be based on that at all. We
I
have
would
to
ask if that applies to
set
conditional
that
zoning
aside.
though. Mike, and I don't know the answer to that. If that applies, I'm sure Jesse has an opinion as our attorney has looked into this heavily. If being a conditional zoning, can we ask the what if and the alternate that he's referring to here? I'm asking you for now, Michael, sorry.
Specifically about ownership.
Well, they've presented a rental units. The question is from someone here, can we ask you consider an alternative, in this case, ownership? In general, that's not allowed. That's a type of steering somebody away from what they've applied for, but this is conditional zoning. Is there an exception for that in this case or not?
That's not my understanding.
Okay.
And again, the comment's already been made, and the development still before you at this 3rd meeting is
Yeah.
rental based.
Again, my only
Yeah.
asterisk there is the conditional zoning aspect of it. Otherwise, I fully agree with the response here.
Yeah, and you can think of it as a rent for rent project and a for sale project that otherwise look the same, are exactly the same for any zoning approval. I do want to point out though that, you know, things can change over the life of a development. It is possible that down the road things could be split up. That's not the plan for now, but you know, the law on zoning kind of recognizes that there's not really much of a difference except in paper land of the register.
For our process in this, I agree with that. For our role in this, I agree with that.
So,
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Okay, of course, the big concern here is conditional zoning. That's what the request is all about. Change the zoning so this development or any development could be made. And so that's the main point. And I'd like to say to everyone in the audience tonight, thanks for being here and participating. I would like to add one thing. Whatever happens tonight is not the final answer. So please stay informed and appear at council for some additional hearings. And as mentioned before, recently we approved this conditional rezoning. And at that time it was universally understood, I think, that this could and would probably be used to help someone that was living here before the town of Mills River was chartered, so they could possibly carve out a small section for their children and maybe grandchildren to build a home. That's what I had in mind for conditional zoning anyway. So here we are today. The first application for conditional zoning that could possibly be considered spot zoning, could be considered a spot zone, is for an up to a 290 apartment development with high density. Most parcels adjacent to this property are presently zoned MR1 light industrial, which I feel is more in line with the goals of Mills River. I think from listening to the voices from the past meetings and tonight that this property should remain zoned as is. I am well aware that the property owner would like to maximize the sale of this property, and I think the town of Mills River should assist him in any way possible. Mills River already works with support and supports various economic development organizations that I would strongly suggest that this town work with these organizations, keep this property zoned as is, and quickly find a suitable facility for this property. One other thought comes to mind. Mills River recently adopted a land preservation initiative. This would be a great opportunity to look at ways to preserve this property and allow the owner to still have use of it without destroying the landscape of Mills River. Just think, 290 apartments, that means probably very close to 600 additional residents in Mills River, probably that many additional vehicles, greatly increasing traffic both in and out of Mills River daily, and probably overloading the already capacity schools. Also, 600 additional residents will create more demand for services, which creates additional costs, and of course, more taxes to pay for everything. Bigger for Mills River is not better. I think we can all agree Mills River wants and needs some workforce housing for our teachers and first responders. But I don't see that this proposed development would come close to filling this need. Would love to work with a local owner developer on a small scale development of this type, however. Just think the development of these 74 acres compared to the property adjacent to Town Hall here that the town just bought. We're talking up to 65 buildings plus accessory buildings placed on a property that size, right adjacent to this building. That would certainly be a lot of paving, which will create tremendous runoff, necessitating numerous retention ponds, taking up more of the open space. Not my idea of a low density project. And one final thought I would like to point out, it seems that the government has taken on the idea of distributing millions of illegals throughout the nation. Just look at what is happening.
Mr. Foster, I'm going to stop you there.
I'd like to have my say.
You may, concerning planning and zoning, when it comes into
This is what happens.
citizenship
happens.
status of individuals, I'm just going to have to stop you there. We're in,
Could happen.
we're in land that we just don't need to be traveling.
Well, we
You've,
do, because it's
You've
affecting
given your
Mills River.
thoughts. I believe that's good, but
Everybody's lives.
I think that we can do our campaign in another venue. I think we can,
Just state the
keep
fact.
this strictly
All around
in
us
planning
is
and
happening.
zoning. Thank you, sir. That's
thank you.
enough. Any other questions,
Questions only or got comments?
comments?
I can only speak for myself here. When I first saw this come out in an email, my immediate gut was hard no. I just see what I see going on in Fletcher, Arden, East 64, Howard Gap. I moved here from East 64. You don't know that used to be our applicant. One thing led to another. They opened the door and the floodgates hit them hard, and they're just apartments there. Traffic, noise, lights, congestion, loitering, lots of things. If you don't notice at all these meetings, I'm studiously writing as fast as I can. I can't keep up. But there were 6 or 7 objections that come up repeatedly, not just when the applicants are here, but town council meetings, planning board speakings, the board up here, private phone calls I've had with council members, board members, citizens. A lot of them were overcome, so I won't rehash them, but there were some huge positives to this, and I will tell you, my 20 years of real estate, I've never seen a company put the effort in this company. But it's impressive. A lot of work. But I keep landing in the same spot, and that this is conditional, so I'm gonna read my words so I make sure I get them right. One sentence real quickly. In conditional zoning, I feel the single most heavily weighted evidence should go what the public tells us. Because we're not checking boxes here. Allowed by right, special zone, special permit. It's not a Board of Adjustments meeting where we're in quasi judicial and we satisfied something. If ever there was an opportunity to give 90%, 99% of the weight to the public opinion, this is it. And for that reason, I would like to make a motion that we suggest to town council that this application be done.
I would second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have discussion about the motions?
That might be my wife yelling over there.
So, Mr. Cole,
Yeah, I just have some comments. And first, just to finish the answer to that first question, I think that's what frustrates people about government. I would assume the answer would be no, because that's not what they do. They're very good at what they do. I've looked at all the projects. I've looked at I've done my homework. Charlotte, Chapel Hill, I think Atlanta, certainly other places, Florida and so forth. Fort Mill, South Carolina, which is South Charlotte. And this is a beautiful project as well. And then I read an article where the gentleman who owns part of the company brought investors from New York and so forth. Nothing unusual about any of that. And nothing unusual about this, other than it may not fit for Mills River. It says they focus on developing, constructing, managing luxury for rent and mixed use housing. So I'm not sure that fits into the need we have for housing. It's a beautiful project, and they've done some beautiful projects. But I don't want Mills River to be South Asheville. I don't think it fits the needs for the average individual to pay $1,600 for a 1-bedroom unit, which is probably easy to get. But I just don't know if it fits the needs. And again, that feedback comes from what I hear from the public and so forth. So I thought I'd just share that thought with you. They've traveled here. They've done a great job. It's wonderful. I'm just not sure it's for Mills River.
okay, thank you very much. Any other comments? Okay, so before we take this vote, remember what our charter is. Remember that we're not going to consider whether it's rented or owned as part of our approval or not. And we're also not going to consider the schools. We can't do that. But if in your mind, I want you to vote your conscience. That's what we're called to do. We're called to have a lively, spirited discussion and free and open exchange of ideas. And then we vote what we feel is in the best interest of Mills River. Ms. Marina?
Yeah, before I came here, I was reviewing the conditional zoning, rezoning ordinances, which I had hoped to be able to refer to, but now cannot find. I think it would be useful if it's possible for that to just be brought up. If we could all just maybe revisit the actual language of the rezoning, what the conditional rezoning ordinance, what it is, it says for us to do when we are evaluating such a thing. I mean, like I said, I looked at it before, and now I can't get my fingers on it.
Lisa, you mean that independent? Sorry, my microphone's not on. Independent of this applicant.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, I think in addition to this application, I mean, I think we should just we're being asked to, we're being asked to consider a rezoning, under conditional rezoning, but we don't have that, ordinance in front of us, right? So I think it would be useful refresher. Just
Sure.
to kind of.
And we could take a short break if we need to, if y'all would be willing to pull that up for us so that we can review that. So with that being said, while y'all are pulling that up, Mr. Britton, if you have a comment, I think we'll pause. We'll accept that we do have the motion on the floor. We do have a second. We're in deliberation. It's not very usual to accept a public comment at that point. But
I wouldn't do it then.
okay, I apologize, Mr. Britton.
Okay.
I always like to hear what you have to say. I appreciate and value your wisdom. And so, and Mrs. Britton is a saint for putting up with both of us.
Can I just
But,
clarify, which section of the ordinance you'd like the main part about conditional zoning
Yeah.
with what can be varied and all that?
What can be buried?
Varied,
Very,
yeah, like what I emailed you.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank,
This will take a minute or
it'll
less.
take just
Yeah.
a minute.
thank you.
Again, well, from the applicant, we do have the motion and the second. If we could
Call a vote.
pause the motion and the second, or take it down so that we can have some more comment, that's fine. Otherwise, if not, then after we answer the question Ms. Marino has, then we'll vote.
I'm fine with pulling that motion back if you'd like to continue the discussion.
That's fine.
Just to point out, I did wait until we were done with open questions before I made that motion.
Yes, you did. And I
Make sure
really
no one was
appreciate
feeling
that.
rushed there, and if you were.
I appreciate that. While they're looking at it, we'll get back to your motion then, Mr. Swords, if you would.
Yeah, I just wanted to provide the general comment that the planning board's role is to evaluate the proposal in comparison to the town's comprehensive plan and other adopted plans. And the staff report basically gives Mr. Malchek's kind of summary of how it compares to the zoning ordinance and to the comprehensive plan and all that. So I would just direct you all to the staff report in addition to the ordinance itself.
Okay, thank you. And since we're taking some comment now, Mr. Britton, if you'd like.
So I'm Joe Britton. I'm a sixth generation Mills River resident, and I just had a question. If this is approved, will it open the floodgates? Will this set a precedent that cannot be dialed back in at a project that may not be as good or as useful or whatever as this one may be? Does this make it where it's going to be real hard to say no to anything that comes down the
Well,
pipe?
Mr. Britton, that was my comment, so if you don't mind, I'll respond.
Yeah.
First of all, just to make sure anyone watching or here in person understands, we don't have the ability to approve or turn this down. We're making a recommendation to
Right.
town council. I
Okay.
just want to make sure everyone understands
Right,
that. The ultimate decision is not on us. Do they
Okay.
take our opinion into consideration? I like to think so. The precedent has been set for what I said a minute ago to
Mhm.
come to fruition. That's not a hypothetical floodgates opening. Please visit Arden Fletcher 64.
Mhm.
You really want to see what it looks like? Go over to Sevierville.
Oh, yeah.
They used to be a passway to get through to Gatlinburg. What are they now? Right? So it does open a floodgate. This is one of the nicest I've seen in my 21 years being in the business I'm in. We have builders in this room. They can probably shake their heads. Yes, this is prepared well. This is thoughtful, it's professional. There's a damn good argument there. My concern is the floodgates. My biggest concern is the floodgates. We've asked these gentlemen to produce a lot of supporting documents. They have done it. And I keep coming back to what I said a minute ago. If ever there was a time to weight heavily the people's opinion, it's now. This is not a check A, B, and C and have to approve it situation.
Okay.
So I do worry about those 4-story, 5-story buildings. I do worry about, the next project is going to be a big cubical rectangle.
Yeah, that's just
And
it.
it's going to
Well,
be
that-
ugly as
that-
hell. And you know what we're going to do? Is that their fault? Nope.
No.
But I'm not here for them, and I'm not even here for these 7 people, including myself. I'm here for the residents.
Well,
That's how I take my role. If I'm wrong, please feel free to complain to
No,
town
I'm glad.
council.
I'm glad to hear that because that's the worry. This may be a beautiful project. It may be,
It is. and
but the next person that comes in that wants to put up, slums, can we can we recommend to the
Yep.
town council that it be turned down? Well, that was just a question. and thank you for
Yeah,
the
and
answer.
that's another point I'd like to weigh in on. Like what you said, there could be another distribution facility going here. This is zoned,
There could
so
be.
by right, we could have another Amazon. We could have something that would come in and clear cut it. Not only they're going to clear cut it, they're going to level it. Because you can build housing units and accept some variation of topography. But when you clear cut it and pave it, it's going to be, so that's where we also have to take into account, is this one of the best uses that could go here? I don't expect this land to be left vacant. I don't think that we as a town can afford to buy it and preserve it as it is. Because it does have a value, a pretty substantial value, I'm sure.
Well, Jeff, I'd say as a planning board, we need to be
Mhm.
careful about talking out of both sides of our mouths. And we have a second agenda item here that could put us in a position to appear that we're talking out of both sides of our mouths, saying, let's put the residential up there in the middle of the industrial. When we have a good argument that 280 needs more business and not to be all residential. And we're going back and forth and we're
Well,
running the
and
risk.
that's true. That's true. I'm-
But part of this process allows us to speak, unless I misunderstand the conditional zoning you're researching over there, our resident attorney here. Part of this process allows us to weight more heavily the public voices. Honestly, I haven't heard anybody in the public that's in favor of this. I'll be frank. If anyone here has, I'd love to hear.
I haven't either.
So I saw 3 head shakes agreeing with me that not a single person has spoke positively of this. Lisa, you look like you're ready to unload legal stuff.
Well,
on
let me, let me,
I am
say-
not, I can't read it from here.
oh, let me add on,
There's no screen that I can see from this seat.
Well, then Lisa, let me pull back 1 minute because Mike has asked to piggyback something I said and I keep stepping on him.
That's okay. It's not this project, it's the rezoning, to something different. Because, all the work I've seen they've done is phenomenal, but it just doesn't fit for, and I think the representative said we have to look at what the 2040 plan says, and it calls for industrial. And so, and that's what the residents wanted in this part of town. It was a 2-year project and lots of public hearing and that sort of thing. And so I think to your point, yeah, it's not this particular project, it's what we have laid out as what we want that to be zoned and used for.
I think, it's a great project. Said that from the beginning. But not in Mills River. I think they've done a great job of planning. But it's not what I want to see in Mills River. They said, talked to a lot of people, found one person that was in favor of it on the resident.
Okay.
Jeff, do you mind if I encourage Lonnie and Billy, if you have anything to contribute here, small as it is? I'm a fan of all 7 of our opinions. I know I'm the loudest, and I'm sorry.
No, I totally agree with Shane Brown.
Okay. Your conversations out there, you feel they're in line with that motion? I mean, that's what I'm here for. We're not elected officials.
Hmm.
It's my opinion, 7 of us should be putting our name on what the public wants, the majority, 51 or 99. We're not elected officials where we're voting independently in a representative democracy, as our conversation went earlier. Mr. Oliver, is there anything you think I haven't thought through well enough before making my motion?
I appreciate the fact that they increased the buffering around it,
They did amazing.
Hmm.
They did amazing.
and that, that there would be a number, they mentioned hopefully in the 80s of smaller homes that not would fit the working class people, that especially starting out, young couples that might be a place that they could afford to live. Those 2 things I'm appreciative of, so I'm kind of teetering on it.
That's a tough one because supply and demand are going to drive that dollar amount. They're not going to say we're going to charge less because we're good people. They're not.
So the section, and if I'm reading it now off my phone, and I assume that it is the same as what may be on that screen somewhere. Michael, it's a section F. Is that F? Yeah, okay. So in section F of the ordinance, it says, in return for greater flexibility in site design requirements, conditional zoning districts are expected to deliver exceptional quality community designs that preserve critical environmental resources, provide high quality open space amenities, incorporate creative design in the layout of buildings, open space and circulation, and assure compatibility with surrounding land uses and neighborhood character, and provide greater efficiency in the layout and provision of roads, utilities, and other infrastructure. I think this one's tricky in many ways. I think that, as has been commented on by many members of the board, there is a lot of design and thought that went into this project. However, I think what kind of stands out to me in this language is this idea of preserving critical environmental resources, providing open space amenities, presumably, you know, that incorporating, and then the greater efficiency and layout and provision of roads. And it seems to me that the use here of creating a residential space on what is currently zoned a light industrial space. I mean, the reason that the owner, yes, someone could come and clear cut it and put a big, you know, by right warehouse on that site. However, we already know that the site in and of itself, the full, is not compatible with that, because which is what's leading the property owner to kind of consider alternatives. But to me, it doesn't seem to meet the standard that is described in the ordinance.
Not to put you on the spot, but I'm curious, the same question. Have you spoken with anybody who is jumping up and down in favor of this, asking you to approve it?
I have not spoken to anyone who has said that they are in favor of it. And to the extent that I've heard anything from the residents of Mills River, it's here. And I would say it's perhaps not been specific to this project, but it's been in the general greater conversations that we've had over the last few months. Which seem to be less inclined and less favorable to development, which would make us like South Asheville or Arden or other surrounding communities. I mean, I think the voice that we've heard numerous times is to try not to allow that kind of development to happen here.
Consistent with what I've heard. Mr. Chair, if you feel our
Okay.
pause has facilitated the voices you'd like to help.
I believe we've heard a lot of voices. I do.
Yeah.
We've heard a lot of opinions. Personally, I don't believe this project works anywhere else but this location. I would not be in favor of this on South Mills River Road, even on 280. If we look at what would be a commercial type corridor separate from the Mills River residential that we've looked at, rural residential. I think we do have a housing shortage. I think that this project, this location, traffic wise, the least impact, and that's shown in the traffic impact analysis. Traffic settled. As far as schools, can't consider it. As far as there's just a lot of things about this project where they've really tried hard. They've answered every question. They've come back. We've kept them. This is the third time they've answered every question. As far as this project, this location, I think this is suitable in this location. Again, I don't think it's suitable anywhere else. 290 units, but that's 4 units per acre, which is multifamily standard. That's a Mills River standard for multifamily. So the building height, 35 feet, but they're asking for 10 more feet in order to have a sloped roof. I don't have a problem with that. I think they've gone beyond what we require for buffers. It is a rezoning. It is our first conditional rezoning. I understand the reluctance to do that. I don't think this affects anywhere else in the town. I think this is on the outskirts of town. So in that case, I have no real reservations about this project because of that. I feel like this project fits this location for these reasons. It doesn't fit anywhere else in Mills River. I don't think that this will open the floodgates to South Mills River, North Mills River, anywhere else if it's rezoned to allow this project at this location. So that's my opinion. If it were anywhere else, as far as what we see as we drive down 280, I don't think that visually it's an issue. Yeah, I think it helps provide housing, which is we're very short of. We've talked about that. We've gone over all these things. So me personally, I would be in favor of this, but I understand each of y'all have your own reason. I'm one vote. So with that being said, Mr. Ross, if you'd like to redo your, or anyone else, or any other discussion up here.
I don't agree with, I'm not arguing with Jeff. I'm just sharing my opinion. So, and I appreciate your opinion always. I appreciate everybody's opinion. I don't agree that it doesn't influence things in other parts of town, because gentleman here tonight, I respect, I won't call him out by name, but mentioned a couple meetings ago, or maybe the last meeting, if you're going to rezone here for something different, why wouldn't you rezone somewhere else? Something in particular that he was in favor of. And so I do think it does influence. If it's a comprehensive plan, it's not a, zone by zone plan. I do think it does affect, the residents' outlook on all parts of town if you're deviating from that map. That's just my opinion. Just thought I'd share that. So.
Sure. And that's, when we talked about conditional zoning, one of the reasons was that the rezoning would allow us to have these discussions and not have to have a quasi judicial hearing and to take the input of the public. I've worked with a lot of these projects. This is one of the best. But again, my opinion is for this location, and it will have some effects. Yes, the traffic study says that people will go into Mills River. They will shop at Ingles or whatever grocery store happens to be their favorite. But it is on a major 5-lane highway, and it's really close to the interstate, and so I don't expect a whole lot of commuter traffic to travel north-south Mills River Road, Schoolhouse Road. So, but anyway, all that's being said, that's, we may disagree, but that's okay. That's why we have the discussions. So.
Said, yeah, we have to.
Mhm.
Each person that might apply for a conditional zoning, each situation would have to be looked at and studied just like we're doing this.
That's correct.
And at first I wasn't crazy about it, but thinking about that it's at the very end of Mills River, near the river, coming in, I'd rather see it there than anywhere else, Down at Mills River.
Guys, I'll concede to both of you that this is the least invasive and the most aesthetically pleasing of what could possibly ever be presented. I think the baseline is no one in the town wants it, even with this.
Well, it's at the end, depends on which way you're going as well. I mean,
That's
coming
true.
toward Mills River, if that's the first thing you see, is that, on the other end has a hole, so in the ground, but that's not the first thing we want folks to see, I guess.
Fact,
Well, the factory puts money, this is a different discussion, but factory puts money into the community.
change conditional zoning or residential. Probably fall back to the fact, what I would think.
Could do.
Okay,
Can we vote?
we need a motion. No, he took it down.
I
So the
pulled it
motion-
back or paused it and Arlie.
The
could
motion
correct
has
me.
been taken back, so if you'd like to remake your motion.
I'd like Arlie to coach me on what she would like to see next.
I think we just
You're fine
paused
with
it. I
another
think we
motion?
just- I think you just paused it for discussion,
No, we just
not
paused.
withdrew it.
Is that allowable? Because I want to make sure we're following the rules of
This
this.
is a continuation of the
I don't want a
discussion.
technicality.
No,
So, okay then, so now it's been determined we do have a motion, we do have a second. All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Okay, and those opposed? Aye. Okay, so we have a 5-2 vote. We are recommending that council deny this application. Right. Okay, now let's move on to new business. Oh,
My mic just died, but the statement of consistency still need to be considered.
I'm sorry, is that at the back of the packet? I looked and I'm sorry if I didn't see anything.
Comprehensive plans.
Okay.
okay.
All I have is the sewage part of this.
I am
the
looking
back.
for that.
So,
There you are.
so as it's written,
Oh, here we go.
that is not the action the board took. So what I would recommend is either the board find a goal in the comprehensive plan that supports your decision and you adopt that as your statement of consistency, or you move to make a motion that the draft staff prepared for you is inconsistent and recommend denial. But either way, a new draft statement of consistency will need to be prepared.
We have supporting statement to put with that. Apologies, I didn't see it in the packet unless someone's found it yet. I don't believe that's it.
Oh, it is inconsistent.
What was the first thing you said,
It's
Mike?
the Attachment M.
It's the last page.
Yeah.
Sorry, usually the statements of consistency are the very last thing.
So because staff's
Back of the thing.
because staff's recommendation
Okay.
was to approve, the draft statement of consistency is written that way. Since the board's chosen to recommend denial, we either need to tie this to another element of the comprehensive plan that supports the decision you made, or you can move to deny the statement of consistency as presented and recommend denial. But again, that will have to be redrafted.
So of these, everyone's got it in front of them.
So hold on, it's part of what you're asking. We have to either disagree with your assessment that it is consistent, or we have to provide proof that not making any changes is consistent. I'm sorry, we're making a motion here to not changing things.
In the statement of consistency,
We have to change the statement
Because it
of
doesn't support
consistency
your
or have a
decision.
new one.
Right, so statement of consistency has to be the motion.
yeah, because you have to consider the comp plan as part of the zoning decision.
Perfect.
Isn't it consistent with objective 1.3, which is to adopt and update the land use vision map because this is consistent? We're keeping the zone, we're recommending denial of a change in zoning. So we are which is the same as saying you're keeping it consistent
Right.
with the land use vision
That
map.
was my confusion. Kevin, is there any chance you could put the future land use map up there? you don't mind, and if that's accessible. So the blue is what in the future land use?
The industrial
and
and employment.
So is that not tied to the comprehensive plan, that map right there?
Yeah, so you could have a new statement of consistency referencing that. You could have a new statement of consistency that recommend or references goal 1 in the comprehensive plan, protect and enhance the rural small town character of Mills River. But since the decision's gone the other way from how staff's prepared the consistency statement, we need to go through that step to complete this
To the
decision.
staff, please note my questions and bewilderment here are from a place of ignorance, not arrogance. I am in no way arguing this, as I am trying to understand. So speaking very plainly, I see blue on both sides of it on the future land use map.
Right, that is objective 1.3 of the,
And that was
Comp
industrial and employment on the future land use map. E, is that correct? Kevin, if you could scroll to that
Based
bottom
on,
right for me.
so would it be acceptable for me to write in denial in consistency with objective 1.3?
What 1.3 is adoption and update of the future land use map, and that's not the decision we're considering tonight. I think maybe the easiest way to
well,
move forward.
it does say refer to land use vision map as a guide in the review of rezoning requests.
Yes, that's
Policy
correct.
1.3.4.
Me, industrial and employment, that's how it is, and we're keeping it that way. And that seems to be very consistent. Again, I mean, everyone up here, this is not arrogantly said, this is ignorantly said. I really want to make sure that that's something that everyone agrees to. My interpretation of this.
My suggestion to support the decision the board's made would be to adopt a statement of consistency, basically referencing the future land use map, that the proposed uses are not consistent with the industrial and employment district future land uses encouraged for that area, and that it's not consistent with goal 6 of the comprehensive plan, retaining the small town character.
Or Lee, how
And-
difficult, I'm sorry, I thought my.
And if there's consensus on that, staff can then draft up a new version for the
And I'll
chair
come
to
in.
sign
Alright.
after the fact. If there's consensus, yeah.
Yeah, we
Or
got,
Lee, are
I
you
think,
smiling at that?
I think that'll do it.
You know I want to do it right, and I
We will
apologize.
make
yeah,
that
not
I want to do it
prepared on
right.
that. I should turn
Absolutely.
the sewage map over, or the sewage paper over.
Okay.
Mike, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for that. I'll just let me know when it's done. I'll come sign it. Okay.
Do we need everyone up here to take a?
Y'all want to take a break?
vote on this?
A motion and a vote on statement of consistency. Okay, sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, I apologize. I didn't realize there was a motion. Do we have a,
Someone else make that motion. I'm not on a motion.
I'll make that motion.
okay,
Isn't that
Mr.
bad?
Foster makes the motion that we will we will have a new statement of consistency as described by staff. Second, anyone?
Second.
Second, Mr. Cole.
Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we can all agree on that. Okay, so we've been at this about an hour and a half. Y'all want to take a break? Okay. Let's break until 8 p.m. and then we'll come back and proceed from there. It's not often that we
You wanna
have.
Talk about Clemson and Georgia.
Disqualified.
Well, maybe I'd rather not talk about that quite so much. But you know, we learn lessons every day, and one of these days I hope and pray I'll learn an easy lesson, because I sure haven't. All my lessons seem to be hard lessons, but anyway, so tonight, eagerly anticipated, let's talk a little bit about some rezoning down on South Boylston Highway Corridor. Before we start, this is our new business. Before we start, I'll use my opportunity, or my position as chair to talk a little bit, and I'll say I do want to thank council for giving us the opportunity to talk about this some more. We did send a unanimous vote to approve this, and even I was a holdout, but the idea was that we would have the opportunity to talk about a corridor, and it was already scheduled for us to be talking tonight about non-residential uses in the South Boylston Highway Corridor. So we understand that that property that's along the corridor is different than property up on the side of the mountain that's still in Mills River. So, but yeah, we're glad to keep talking about this. It's a serious thing. It's when we're talking about someone's property rights, what they can do with their property. I think it's very serious, and it should be very deliberate. And it's something that every stone needs to be turned, and every idea, and we argue it from both sides so that we can really see the pros and the cons. And so when we do have a decision, it's we can always say that we gave it our best input. So with all that being said, Mr. Malachek, if you'd be willing to help us get into the new business.
So there's no staff report for this item tonight, just because we requested this just as a discussion item moving forward. But basically the two sub bullets discuss using the corridor overlay or a new commercial zoning district are kind of the two main approaches we can take to tackle having additional uses in this rezoning area. Again, generally south of Schoolhouse Road or Old Turnpike Road and the 280 intersection. Obviously, there's also the option to do a text amendment and revise the rural residential zoning district to include additional uses there. That has been adopted in town code, but again, that doesn't preclude us from doing another text amendment to modify that. So those are kind of the three options before you. We did do a little research on corridor overlays. In the planning field, they are traditionally used for form-based codes, architectural requirements. But state law does allow them to regulate uses, so there's no prohibition against that. We did put out a call for responses on the state planning listserv, and again found that trend kind of carried through. Most people use it for architectural requirements, but that doesn't limit it. And we did find a couple examples of jurisdictions that have, I think it was one actually had a 600-foot overlay measured from the center line of the road, whereas our current corridor overlay used for non-residential building architectural requirements is 500 feet from the edge of pavement. So those are kind of the two approaches just for discussion tonight. I've got the general business ordinance pulled up with a longer list of commercial uses if we want to go through those and kind of consider that. But really just for discussion and questions, happy to help.
Yeah, well, I have a question. It seems like we've talked about this quite a bit the last few months. I'm wondering how it ended up on the agenda again.
Okay, at the last town council meeting last week.
Yeah, I listened to, I watched it,
Okay,
but we got the agenda before the meeting.
right. What was on the agenda was a discussion, and I brought that up and requested it be put on the agenda. We understood that area would be, it was our recommendation to rezone that area to rural residential, Mills River, MRRR. And we also discussed that even if that is rezoned, we still have the opportunity to look at the corridor along 280, immediately adjacent to 280, and discuss about potential commercial uses that could be allowed in that corridor through an overlay. So that's something that was on the agenda. When you asked for that, we talked about that last month. So that's why this is here. So, we, of course, didn't anticipate council action. That's not our, we sent it, and council certainly has the right to proceed as they see fit. And so, as often as council wants us to look at this, we'll be glad to look at it. And the discussions we take from those discussions, and we
What are you looking for?
Overlay map.
change or
I'll
update
just-
as
future
we
of
need to.
use.
So does that help? Does that help understand why
Well, I don't
this
think,
particular
I don't
item's on
think,
here tonight?
I don't mind having discussions forever because it's feedback from the public and all that. I was just curious because I know it
Sure.
didn't come, because we got this before council met. And so, and I know we've talked about these things quite a bit. And so, but that's fine. We can keep doing it.
Okay.
Mike, could I ask Kevin to put the future land use map back up? That's what he's looking for over here. And I think
It's really the description that goes with it. There you go. Nope, you were good.
right there, both of those.
Yeah.
Not that red one though.
Yeah, the bottom one.
Mhm.
Just for anyone looking at that, you're probably looking at the red one. Don't look at that.
I mean, let me finish,
sure the
Jeff.
light
I
side.
do think it's important to continue to discuss because I do think that council and residents of Mills River should understand that we do have the ability, if that area is ever zoned rural residential, and in any zone for that matter, have the ability through text amendment to add to, change things within that zone. So that discussion would be ongoing anyway. I was just curious.
Kevin, I don't know if you can fit the column headers in there if you scroll down too far so everyone can see what desirable, acceptable, and not desirable, what you're looking at there.
There you
Sorry, I'm really glad to have people here, but I want them to, don't want to make any assumptions. They know what we know.
probably know more than we.
So, all right, Mr. Foster, you had a question,
I
some
just
statement?
want to make some general comments, I guess. From what I'm hearing, what we sent to council, of course, is still pending, and I believe there's a public hearing on that. But there's some concern that the way it stands, they want to be guaranteed that anybody operating a small at-home business also at the present would be grandfathered in. And I'd certainly like to see that too, and make it clear. Or maybe we need to even talk about, any new businesses, we can be a certain size. What I'm saying is, I don't want it to be open for discussion for Walmart to come in down there on 280. But I know there's a lot of small businesses already operating on it. That needs to be made clear. They're grandfathered in and under what conditions that they could be expanded. I think that's where we're lacking on what we already have set council.
Yeah, that's
I would
correct.
argue that's,
Council sent it back.
yeah, no,
So it's
well,
back.
they didn't send it back. Officially, they did not send this back. We volunteered further
It was
discussion.
it was already on the agenda and they just chose
Because
to
it was already on the
table
agenda.
the public hearing.
So I just want to be clear, they have not sent anything back to us, Mike, unless I misunderstood the meeting that I was at on Thursday.
All I'll clarify is that this discussion item was requested before council's meeting took place last Thursday.
Perfect.
'Cause it was my understanding, had to watch it on the video, was that council was not ready to take any action until it came back to the planning board, for the planning board to take another look. And our mayor's here tonight. We'd love to hear your thoughts, Mr. Mayor.
So I'm only speaking for one myself, but it's my understanding that we was trying to come up with a meeting date. We had 3 possible dates available at Mills River Elementary's auditorium. And we had at least one, possibly 2 council members that wasn't feeling real comfortable about taking it to that level. Me personally, I would like to see it go to that level. I'd like to hear, we don't have to take action on it. We could be tabled after that or whatever. But I want to hear the majority of the citizens' opinion on this. This is a major deal. We've talked about chopping it up into little sections. I don't know what little looks like. And then how that's going to affect them versus there's going to be a neighbor right next door. Either way we go, big or little. So, and there's been discussion, this is only going to affect that part of town. Well, no, it's going to affect every citizen in this town, one way or the other, and all the people traveling through here. Whether they want to stop and get gas, get a hamburger, or see cows and see grass and see houses. It's going to have some effect on everybody. And I'm smart enough to know that, and y'all are too. It's just a matter, do we get a lot of public input on this in that setting? I've asked it, this is such a big deal. I would wish that he would put a mailer out to all the existing residents that it would affect right off the
Correctly.
bat.
Mhm.
So they got a chance to come to the table and talk. I got mixed feelings about myself. I'm a builder. I make money building houses. But I also know that I think we know that the average home in Mills River right now is over $700,000.
69,
How much?
$769,000. That report was pulled today, 365
That's
days
the
in the
average
rearview
in
mirror.
Mills River. So at some point, we as a group has got to take care of those people that's already here. Because if you start letting little lot sizes in and a lot of tiny homes and all, to me as a builder, I'm not a real estate and don't know much about that end of it, but it looks to me like it's going to drive the prices of the other people's stuff down some. So we got to think about it that way too. But this corridor deal, the whole corridor, I've been to 27 people's houses right now, 27. I get one or two a day if I can, maybe only one. But 27, there is not one person that Shannon Gantz has talked to that wants that whole corridor commercialized. And especially when you tell them 500 feet, because when you go 500 feet through Mills River, you're on the other side of Boylston Creek. It started up. It's on the other side going up. It's going to be Turtle Creek. And they just don't like that thought. Now you talk to them about nodes, potential node at Ray Hill, the node that we've got there now. And they got mixed opinions about that. They do. They understand the one that's already there. Everybody wants to make sure what Mr. Foster said, that anybody that's running a business from their home is protected.
Correct.
And would be able to expand somewhat with that because of cost of living and keep keeping your taxes paid, your insurance and everything paid in Mills River. You may have to expand it to be able to stay here. So we got to take that into consideration. A gal at one of the other meetings brought up a real important thing that we cannot let slip by if this goes through. If you got property, and even if you went to 1.5 acres and you could do an accessory dwelling or whatever, we gonna have to be able to let them put something in front, because I think it was noted in there.
Yeah, it's a couple meetings ago, and that's important. And that's
Yeah.
my point. A text amendment can take care of those
Yeah,
things.
exactly.
Even if town council passes this rural residential, text amendments can address those things, or maybe something that we missed, or something that Mr. Frey, call him out, but he brought up last time he was here, about family businesses. So yeah, those things can be solved. It's not ironclad and we can't change it once it's in place. But I'll have more to say about that in a second.
And Mr. Britton, when he mentioned 6th generation, that brought something to my attention too. We are very much a generational town. You included, me, a bunch of us, we're 5, 6 generations here, So, our forefathers worked hard to get what they got, and we want to just make the best use of it we can, however it is. But I want to know what the general public wants to do with this and get their input on it.
Mr. Mayor, have you gotten feedback from people as far as the mixed use zoning? Is that seen in a negative light?
A little bit, cause see, when you go talk to them,
Mhm.
I take one of those flyers that I got mailed to me. And when you tell them what mixed use and what could be, they freak out because they didn't realize it.
Right,
They really do.
correct.
They're like, you're
Most of the
kidding
board
me. They
didn't
could
know
do
that.
that. They could do this right here
Mhm.
beside me. You know, I hadn't ventured off of 280 asking
Right,
questions
right.
unless I'm at the grocery store. But I'm just torn between it. You know, I'm torn.
It is. It's a very tough, it needs to be a very deliberative process.
Yeah.
I don't like telling someone what they can and can't do on their property, but then again, some of the things that, from a commercial standpoint, when someone goes into business and then that changes things if someone wants to build something that doesn't really fit.
And another thing that the general public don't realize that I realize as the mayor, you know, I hate to say this, but sometimes I go shopping in another town because when I walk down the aisles, what are you going to do about these lights?
Yeah.
That guy comes and dumps that dumpster at 4 o'clock in the morning. Can you do anything about that? There's all these questions that gets generated from industrial and commercial and even neighborhood commercial. You know, every time that truck stops here and fills these tanks up, we smell gas fumes for 30 minutes after. That can't be healthy. Anything we can do about that? See, it puts us as a politician in a tough spot. We'd love to do something, but what, from a common sense standpoint, what can we do? All we could do is protect them from all these possibilities coming. And that's when I tell people it could be a quality of life issue by protecting a little section up through there for those people and anybody moved in it. Taking it from 3/4 to an acre and a half, it's not going to change these people that's moving in here. And as long as we put provisions in for some of these family members in the
Mhm.
text amendment, I'm okay with it. As long as we can, if we got a straight line of route to how they got here through a bloodline, and we can provide them a place to live, I'm all about it. I might even lessen it from 3/4 on that situation. Only problem is septic and water up there
Mhm.
pretty much takes 3/4. I'm gonna sit down, let y'all get
Nope,
back at it.
thank you. Thank you for your input. Ms. Good, would you like to, do you have any, we appreciate you being here and for the public, we have a couple of members. We have our mayor and Council Lady Good, and we really appreciate you all taking the time. I'm sure that a couple of members are watching and we thank you for council for what you do. You didn't need to have a quorum. Well, that would take away from what I get to do if you have a quorum.
I
So-
will let the rest of the board know that Councilman Young and Cantrell are watching and listening tonight. I did speak with them
So-
beforehand. I believe Ms. Davis is out of town right now, so.
Thank
And
you, man.
I found
Thanks
out
for
from the
being
mayor that
here.
you'd be attending is the only reason I didn't know if you were, you didn't hear from me because we made it a point to call everybody today. So thank you.
I appreciate y'all giving me the opportunity to speak, and I appreciate coming to the meeting where I can actually hear everybody's opinion, and I appreciate everybody's opinion. I know y'all take a lot out of your time to do homework and research this before it comes to the council. And I want to hear what every one of y'all have to say, and I do appreciate it. We've been on some really hot topics lately, and I commend y'all for handling things the way you do. Y'all are very professional and true to your residency, and I appreciate that. The zoning that's coming up, the comprehensive plan, that is very important. And I've listened to people and talked to tons of people, and people are very concerned about this. When the council opted to send it back to the planning board for more discussion, I made the comment that, I hope everybody does good homework. because I know y'all do. And I appreciate it. The only thing that concerns me, I'm all for keeping Mills River rural and residential. That's very important to everybody I have spoken with, whether they've been here a year or 40 years. That's up front and foremost. And I just get concerned when I see people trying to put restrictions out, because it does concern me that it's opening up the door for yet more restrictions later on. And I still think that the landowner, has rights. They live here, their family has worked blood, sweat, and tears for the land, whether it was from a year ago or 60 years ago. It's all come expensively. And I just want to make sure that we take care of the residents and that they get a voice and a say in this. And I hope they all come out to the public hearing when we have that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for that. Okay, so tonight, our charge for tonight is discussion, input. Still got some people that are willing to give up their time to be here this long in the meeting. Is there anyone would like to say anything? Even if you said something before, we'd be glad to hear from you. Yes, ma'am. That's okay.
So just moved here a year ago. I'm one of these people, just 1 year. When I first came here, I was looking for a home up here from Florida for a year, looking all over the place. And every time something came up in Mills River, I zoned in on it. This is where I want to live. I said, I've told everybody, but I want to be in Mills River. They're saying, oh, move to Asheville. Then you've got, the Mission Hospital. It's another story. And
You chose wisely.
I'm also a nurse. Did I mention that? So yeah, I mean, every single time I saw something in Mills River, I drove by Mills River Elementary School because, like I said, I have an adopted 7-year-old son, and I was looking for a good school system. I saw that school, fell in love. Our principal's the best I've ever met in my life, and I raised 3 other kids. So understand that there is something so special here. You don't want to mess with that. This is so important that going along Boylston Highway, I take a ride down to Brevard, I take a ride up to Asheville, I go to Hendersonville. We're in the middle of everything, but we look like we're the pinnacle of everything. And I would love to just keep it that way. Don't mess up our streets, don't mess up our roadways. I am all for individual rights and people's homes being under their own control. I run a small business myself. It's just a remote business though. So yeah, let people expand, let people with the addendums, et cetera, but don't change what you have here. You have no idea how incredible, well, maybe you do, but I do too. I understand. This is where I wanted to live. And when we found our home, our neighbors are fabulous. Yeah. So, yeah.
Whoever that might be.
Whoever that might be,
Whoever
we
that
have
may-
fabulous neighbors.
We're all fortunate to have great neighbors.
Let me
I've
tell
got
you.
the best.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So understand, don't mess with it. Try to preserve as much as you can. And that would be my input.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And what we are discussing is a way to preserve that. And we may have to mess with the zoning a little bit to keep it preserved. Yes, ma'am. Because right now, Mills River mixed use is practically anything. Anything you want to put in there, you can. And so my understanding, the people I've gotten feedback from and listened to and all that, very few people are in favor of Mills River mixed use as it stands now. What people are concerned about is preserving some of the options, you know, for home businesses, for some of the places, and there's, you know, commercial uses do help pay the taxes. They do. And I was hoping there was a way to let them pay a little bit more of the taxes, but unfortunately in North Carolina, we're told what we can do and what we can't. So maybe we can talk to our legislators about that someday. But anyway, so what we've got's not, it could potentially not work. Potentially, Mills River mixed use could cause problems. And so that's why the discussion started. What can we do? What can we do to help preserve Mills River? And we now have a rural residential zoning. And this is pretty much it right here. It's right there on that line: parks, public space, trails, recreation, agriculture, estate lots, and residential. Single family. What we don't want is industrial, and I think commercial with a caveat there, and multifamily in these areas that we see as rural residential. There are some nodes, and maybe that's how we need to go back and look at it, like the mayor says. Maybe we need to go back and look at Ray Hill Road and some of the other intersections and say, well, maybe this is a good place for a node to allow commercial. And of course, what's already there, we want to protect. But so that's pretty much my understanding.
Mike,
Okay.
could you confirm for everyone? I know you and I spoke on the phone and I already asked you this question once today. If Kevin, if you could scroll back to the map for me, and Mike, if you could confirm or explain to everybody, how did this come to be in existence?
So this is the future land use map. I will say this version is slightly outdated because we did do the future land.
Ray
use
Hill
and-
isn't there in the
and
commercial
Ray-
crossroads.
Correct. The purple area around Ray Hill Road's no longer.
And that's right up here.
But why did we change that?
But
Why did
the-
we change that
this all
particular
came-
crossroad?
Sorry?
That particular crossroad was eliminated for what reason?
Well, let me just get to the comprehensive plan. So the original question, this all came from the Making Mills River Comprehensive Plan that was adopted by town council in 2021. I think it went on for 2 years. There was public input. And then again, council ultimately adopted that plan. So what's led to the conversation now is the green area on the map is now called rural agricultural. And as the chair just read through those desirable future land uses, it does not include a lot of commercial, multifamily, or industrial. Actually, right now, those are considered not desirable for that area. Now, the mixed use zoning district, I don't have this map in front of us tonight, but the mixed use zoning district basically is in almost all of those rural residential areas. So about 2/3 of our town has a zoning that's inconsistent with our adopted land use plan, informed by obviously boards and council, but also the public citizens. Surveys, design charrettes, where people come in and put stuff on a map. What do you think should go here? That was all done as part of that comprehensive plan process. So that's what informed, again, the comprehensive plan that we talk about almost every meeting, and led to this map as well. But again, I think what led to this whole discussion and rural residential rezoning is that we have 2/3 of our town that has mixed use zoning overlapping with a future land use designation, and they are not compatible or consistent with each other.
Thank All you. right.
Yeah.
So Chair, if you don't mind me elaborating.
Don't
on
mind a
that,
bit.
As I just said, I called Michael earlier today and asked this question because I wanted to make sure I understood it correctly, and I just let the public know two things. This is what spurred this conversation, the conflict that exists between what the people said they wanted in a 2-year comprehensive study that created the comprehensive plan, which this map derived from, and was put into place to guide the planning board, to put into place to guide the town council, elected officials. The conflict between what you said you wanted and what's allowed in Mills River mixed use is all 6 of you, please correct me, that was the catalyst for this conversation 9 months ago now. So agreeing with that, I don't want anyone to think there's an agenda being pushed by someone. This is a reaction to essentially going, oh, we see a discrepancy, but I can't just change it because it's not an admin discrepancy. It's a massive one. And it is clearly, to me, what's the most important of those two, zoning or the people's voices, is the people's voices. The people's voices said the zoning's wrong. I know Mr. Gauntz just said this, or Mayor Gauntz just said this, but most people don't realize what can be done in mixed use. It's scary. I mean, anything. The list of what can't be done is very short and it's very odd. And Michael and I discussed that again today. But also for anyone looking at this future land use map, just a note here, that is not zoning. That is what you told the town you wanted to see done. And as far as uses go, estate lots was one of those, and two-thirds of an acre in mixed use is not an estate lot. It didn't say high density housing or medium density housing. It said estate lots. So that's why we came to 1.5 acres. If I was pushing a personal agenda, that would have been 3. But that's not what spurred this conversation. I think one of the biggest dilemmas we each have, and Sandra, this isn't in response to you saying it just now, but this is in response to a lot of people have brought up what you said, the heartburn of someone telling me what I can do and can't do. You know, that ship's kind of sailed. In a community, you affect me and I affect you. I live on Schoolhouse Road. You live in Holly Haven. This development that we just discussed earlier this evening affects the Frady family, right? What they do affects the people who live down there. That's the byproduct of being in a community. So I'll say 2 things. The 2 biggest objections I've heard in my list of objections is it's going to affect values, and I don't like being told what I can do and can't do. I don't think anyone here would raise their hand if I asked you if you wanted a Dollar General in your backyard. I don't think anyone would raise their hand or speak up if I said, hey, would you like a 100,000 square foot distribution center in your front yard? I don't think anyone wants those things. So when you see it happen over there, you kind of, but Mills River mixed use makes it allowed, and this is what I'd like everyone to be reminded, by right to do that kind of stuff where it's allowed right now, which is the conflict that we have. What you said you want it used for and what zoning says can be done are the conflict. I'm not saying what we presented to town council is the answer. Please correct me if I'm wrong on this one. My hopes were we sent it to them because they have the ability to spend the big money on getting people to show up and voice their opinions, where we kind of had to do the freebie survey. Because people would have been screaming if we would have spent 10 grand on a survey. So my hopes were that the town could get the bigger crowd and hear these opinions, because there's going to be some pissed off people. And I'll say this, and Lisa, I know you've got something to say if you don't mind. The scenario I gave a minute ago of the Dollar General or the ceramic store or whatever it is going and affecting everybody. Mayor Gauntz and I spoke earlier today. He quoted a number. I'm going to give it to you all perfectly because I pulled this out of the MLS. And Stacy, feel free to double check my numbers. I know you can do that. 365 days in the rear view mirror from today. The average home in the town of Mills River, $769,000. If you put down 20% on average insurance and taxes, your mortgage would be a little over $4,250. The affordable housing ship has sailed. Okay. And give you something really to think about here. I have a ton of objections here that I've written down in all my notes and typed up and keep track of myself. I'm not getting into all of those, whether it's, danger to tractors or business taxes, alleviate property taxes, a myth, I would argue, a huge one. And I would combat it with, please look at our neighbors in Fletcher and all the businesses they have. And look at our tax rate compared to Fletcher's. It's not close. Look at Hendersonville, more business than anyone in the county. Would you rather have their tax rate or ours? It's not close. I know it's easy to say businesses collect a lot of bring in a lot of taxes, and they do. But what we don't realize is they also change our staff by double. We have to have our own police force. We're responsible for so much more. Our costs go up so exponentially. And it hurts values. So you want to guess what the average property value is in Fletcher today in the rear view mirror 365 days? It's 38.4% less than Mills River. They have a ton of businesses collecting a ton of taxes. They charge their residents more than us, and their homes are worth 38% less. And you can go over there and find this huge apartment complex and a distribution center and a manufacturing plant and single family homes, and there's no separation between any of the above. So I would make that as my strongest argument that our front row people on 280 have every right to be ticked off. It hurts them. Our second row people are going to get hurt if they have more dollar stores and these other things, but it affects our whole community. We mentioned all these things, lights, congestion, traffic, noise, loitering, homelessness. It's all going to be a bigger issue. And we're going to have to, if you don't know this, our town is amazingly frugal. Amazingly frugal. We don't need more taxes. We actually have an excess in our account right now. We're a damn frugal town. I know I'm on my soapbox, but there's a lot of myths out there I'd like to keep busting. But if you have any specific questions, hit me with them, because I've overcome every objection that we've been hit with, other than, yes, our front row on 280 gets hurt, and I hate it. But I go back to what I said, part of living in a community is I have to give a little something. Mayor just said he's torn. I'm torn for those two things right there. It hurts. Like the mayor, I make less money if we pass this, because I sell homes. He builds homes. I don't need to second think that at all. I'll gladly take that loss in income for the town I live in.
I really, thank you, Brian. I really appreciate all of that. And one of the things I think is, you're talking about sort of our present day conversation and the present day values, which I think is super helpful. But someone, I think it was at the last meeting and not the one before that. I think it was at the last meeting. We had a resident come up and say that he had been on the planning board and had been part of this discussion previously.
I think that was Jerry. He's right there.
And well, thank you, Jerry, because I was fascinated by that, and I did my homework and I went through the town of Mills River's minutes. It was October 2007 when the town of Mills River considered virtually this exact same question. 17 years ago, October. I tried to print them out. I wasn't able to, but if you don't mind, I have the PDF. It's all online. Anyone can look it up. But back in 2007, the town held, I believe, 4 public meetings where they gathered input from residents. And now this is before I lived here. It was before many other people lived here. It was not long after the town was incorporated. And I was surprised to see the vast majority of people were consistent with what we have heard people say here today. So I just want to read some. These are in the public record. These are comments that were collected in 2007. Mountain land should be 5 acres, flat land 3 acres. As a native of Henderson County, I would like to keep Mills River as residential as possible. The more commercial we become, the more traffic congestion we will have. In my opinion, we're already close enough to Target and Lowe's, which are right down the road from the airport. We have a grocery store, we have restaurants, we have a gas station. They mentioned the things this is in 2007. They felt like everything we needed. Locate major restaurants and retail businesses along Highway 191 and 280. No boxy drive-throughs. Sorry, the comments are sort of haphazard. They seem to just be little quotes. leave our community as is, leave as a farm town. Leave as is, don't need restaurants or car lots. There was a map attached to all of this, which again, so much mirrors the map that we finally established in 2020. So the thing that surprised me though, so just for anyone who wants to look it up, I'm just going to go back to the first page so I can tell you exactly where you can find this. This was in October 22nd, 2007, and it's a report of the staff report, where they presented the results of 4 workshops that were held in over 2 weeks in June of 2007 at different times and locations in order to capture. There was also a survey done at the time. And the results, again, seem to be very consistent. Yes, there were people that said rightly, right, that this affects property rights. And I'm not saying all of the feedback was positive. Of course, it wasn't. But again, in terms of the number of voices that seem to have been heard then, 17 years ago, and the overall take of what they were saying then was what we're hearing again. And what that I couldn't find in the record is what happened to this report.
Still mixed use.
It's right.
And I think
But-
that's the level of frustration that we get from longtime residents, is that why hasn't something happened? And as we've talked these last 9 months and not done anything about density, we're going to get 396 new homes here shortly that we might not be able to do anything about. Yeah, I mean, if 5% of the land is roads, which has been their other development, there's 396 homes coming. And so that's really going to frustrate longtime residents. Not only did you have that, but when the 2040 map was put out, there were a number of public hearings, just 3 years ago. And then a letter from the town manager at the time, this plan making Mills River is the result of 2 years of public input, which is public meeting, stakeholder engagement, community outreach, technical analysis, made possible by the council and the board, and encouraging that Mills River appropriately grows and so forth. And so again, but nothing has happened. And since then, we've had all of these, high density developments. And so that is I realize there's a requirement from the state of North Carolina to have 30 days, and have a public hearing and so forth. But why that hasn't happened yet, I don't know, because while we want to try to get it perfect, and while we're trying to get it perfect, while we're doing that, perfection is the enemy of progress here, because while we're trying to get it perfect, outside players are coming in here, and taking away land that will never again be rural. And it's a shame. And so I'd like to see us move forward and have that public hearing, if it's nothing more than the input, because I think we should know what we're going to get, because the same thing we got in 2007 since then, and in 2021 as well. So, but that's my frustration is, I know there's a concern that it's too restrictive. I mean, one of the council members the other night said we're going to go from and rightfully so. They all do a great job. They have a lot on their plate. We get to focus on one thing, right? But we're going from the least restrictive to the most restrictive, but from the most restrictive, we stopped the bleeding. From there, we can say, what, we did overlook the fact that, somebody may want a garage there, it's a family business or whatever. We can do that, but we've stopped the bleeding. So I'd rather see them enact the zone and then correct things that we overlooked through text amendments and so forth, because it's amazing. I mean, somebody can build right next to you if they want to right now, something that you probably don't want. Councilwoman Good, excuse me, I agree. I mean, zoning is the definition of telling you what to do with your property, and I agree with that. And I don't think that's how we look at zoning. We look at it as protecting, what somebody has, because right now, and I think you brought it up the other night at the council meeting, an older individual wanting an accessory dwelling on that property, and right now, under mixed use, because of actions recently by the town council. That's not available. Is that correct, Mike? So you can't have an accessory dwelling at the moment where this new zone would allow that. And I think that's important. So I'd love to see the public hearing and the decision and implementation, because I think we worked really hard at this to finally implement what people have been asking for a long number of years. And I'll stop.
Yeah, I would add just to that, you know, in light of our earlier discussion tonight, and that is part of, you know, I think conditional zoning would be ideal for a Mills River resident who needs to have a different type of zoning for property. You know, that is another avenue that we now have to address these, in addition to text amendments, right? Is you know, our Mills River residents could take advantage of the conditional zoning and make an application. Is that right? Like,
That I don't know. I have no
is that
idea.
not right?
Any property owner
Right. So
with their consent.
if there was something, again, this sort of idea of stopping the bleeding, stopping, like letting things sort of pause. And then to the extent that individual property owners need something different, there are avenues for those property owners to seek you know, variance isn't the right word, but to seek a different type of zone for their particular property.
And I think we demonstrated that with the business that was across from elementary school.
Right.
Radon Company.
Right, and we looked at the map, and when that business opened, there were no homes built in that area, even though it was I'm not using the right words, but out of compliance with the current zoning, because they were there first. Then we're like, yeah, you should be able to do what you
Had
need to do on
conditional
that
because it was
property.
still
Yeah.
within the dates.
Yeah,
So,
so we're very open about.
Mike, am I missing something, or did we not agree to put the grandfathering into the rural residential?
It's in there.
I've heard that objection a lot, but I thought our conversation was the opposite of what Mr. Foster and
Basically, understand.
Grandfathering is that it's there. It may be non-conforming, but it's there. I think the question may be, well, what if you need to do substantial improvements? What if you want to add 100 square feet?
So can we confirm that grandfathering is in there, Mike?
Lisa brought up a good point.
Mhm.
That's another activity along that corridor that they do. So, with it different than what it is,
Grandfathering is not specifically mentioned in rural residential because we've talked about the non-conforming uses section, and that's really the correct term for it. That's a whole other section of the code, but you're right. If the zoning changes and if your use then doesn't align with the zoning district, it becomes a non-conforming use. And I think what was described in one of the council meetings is if that use is abandoned for 6 months, it can then not be restarted again, and you cannot expand upon it. Because again, in planning, you eventually want uses to conform with the zoning district over time. So in theory, those non-conforming uses stay the same and eventually go away over time.
If they fall out of compliance, they then would revert to the current use zoning, correct?
Correct. So if, let's say I operated an auto repair garage.
Right.
On South Boylston.
That's the one I'm talking
let's
about. That's
say-
good. It's convenient that you're going to use that as an
And
example.
let's say rural residential rezoning was applied, and
Right.
that was now not consistent with the code, not in a permitted use. If I took a trip and abandoned the business for 9 months and came back, I mean, again, staff has to be on top of it to document that, but legally, I would not be allowed to reestablish that use because it was abandoned. But again, there's specific definitions for abandonment. You know, if the sign is still up, that could still be active. But that gets into the non-conformities section of our code. And if we want to change that, we can do it there. But that's for all zoning.
Well, that's what I said.
districts.
That's applicable regardless of zoning. That's not unique to rezoning or
Correct.
downzoning in this case. None of it. It's there for all of our zoning districts. So for us, the non-conforming use is, it just has to be continued without a gap larger than 5 months and 29 days.
And limited expansion. Of course, if there's damage, casualty, building burned down from a fire, you can rebuild.
Place.
But again, if I operate that repair garage and say, oh, I want to double the size, that's not going to be permitted.
So what is the expansion in there right now for non-conforming? Because didn't we have that conversation around that radon company a little bit? I believe that was in there. I want
Yeah,
to say it was a low number, like 10% or something.
Yeah, I believe, oh, a limit. You'll have to give me a second on that, but I believe you're not allowed to expand. Yeah.
And there was no expansion.
If you give me a few minutes, I can
Okay.
confirm that.
So that could be something the board could take separately, but it would need to be applicable to all zoning and under non-conforming uses under whatever the zoning is. I would not say that's specific to this corridor here. Hey, Kevin, while he's doing that, would you do me a big favor and pull up that density map of that one slide I gave you with the aerial? It's really chicken scratch stuff that, if you don't mind, just that one page, since we had density brought up, I just want to get that out of my head.
Yeah, and that's
Because
an
we
area.
keep going
where-
back to usage and density.
That was an area where I had a lot of concerns. I felt like, 2 acres, acre
Thank
and a
you.
half is a pretty big lot, and it might limit someone's ability to, to have their kids live there. But we came to a consensus. And,
Well, you have something to
know.
say, and I want to add on to that.
Consensus doesn't mean I necessarily like it. It means I can live with it. It's like Supreme Pizza, may not be my favorite, but it's pizza and I can live with that.
You have to deal with these analogies at home all the time, too, like everything. Is it not just exhausting? Okay.
So real quick.
She's a
before-
saint.
Yeah.
Before we jump into the density discussion, there is no percent limitation.
Okay, my mistake.
It does say that if there are damaged buildings, the repairs have to be initiated in 12 months and completed within 2 years. That's the only other detailed.
So as a note for the board, and I have a notepad here, sorry, it's getting long, of future discussions. That's one I'm going to put on there. Are you doing that right now? Perfect. I'd like to see, or no, was that a no?
No,
I'd like to see expansion available to non-conforming, whether it's damaged or not. I'd like to have that discussion separately. I think this one
Reasonable
needs to stay on
expansion.
usage and density tonight.
Yeah.
A
my
reason,
opinion.
reasonable expansion.
Reasonable.
Maybe not double
Have
the
that
size,
conversation
but-
later with a list of other things we're going to hit, but those can be changed. I think I use the word low hanging fruit. There's a reason we stopped at Turnpike and Kimsey and, we didn't go over the entire town. When we first rolled this out, Councilwoman Good said, well, why wouldn't we do this to all of Mills River mixed use? And I think our thinking was, maybe we do. But right,
Could that be considered a conditional rezoning? In like conditional that they approve the property?
I think that's a conversation for a later date, if that's okay. I'm focusing on usage and density here. We picked this area for its lower hanging fruit. It's not developed. It doesn't have utilities. I've asked the question, are we allowed to disallow expansion of utilities? Is that the language, Michael, that I used for you? Stop them from putting septic down 280. And I think the answer is we're not going to be allowed to have a town that says that. Talked to one of our councilmen who's not here, and that was one of the conversations we had. I said I would look into. Jerry, I know that's something you brought up about. You want to stop expansion of big business or big developments? Well, limit the utility, septic. We're not going to be able to do that.
Why is that?
I don't believe we can interfere in utilities for multiple reasons, but we were still only 99% on that. And
This is a town attorney question.
That
But
was the
again,
1%.
if I'm a developer, and I want to pay to extend public water to my property in a state road right of way, I believe that's outside of our jurisdictional authority. But again, that needs to be.
that's
checked.
fee simple land down 280, meaning it's theirs. It's the state's.
Who decides what the cost of that is?
So this little map in front of you is super bad chicken scratch. No making fun of me.
Did you?
Those are two identical 6.2 acre parcels. And for residential only, those are average homes in a couple of different neighborhoods, not Mills River Crossing. And what you're seeing is Mills River mixed use used as residential on your left. And if it existed, in application anyway, rural residential is on your right. So that is 6.2 acres. It's 6.2 because I had to come up with an even number of homes as even as I could for the different zoning, and it's at 30,000 square feet. If you can count those real quickly there, that is 9 homes. That is Mills River Crossing North and South. And now the Fulham Farm. And their other division that's just outside of our town limits that they're doing subdivision. On the right is the 1.5. This is meant to just bring everyone's attention to the future. I keep going back to it, the future land use map, because 17 years of input says go back to it. And that has estate lots, and we've settled on that definition at 1.5. If you notice something there, it's not just the number of houses, it's the amount of asphalt. Our DOT guy can tell you, you go over a certain number of homes, your roads have to be wider. That road on the left is wider, right? The cul-de-sac is there. You're hard surfacing, you're losing, you're altering runoff. Your trees go way down. All sorts of driveway, everything goes up. Forget the traffic noise and all that other stuff. So if you want to know what that looks like, I tried to come up with the real example in aerials. The one on the left was easy because Mills River Crossing, but I couldn't find 4 homes contiguous that were 1.5 acres. So did this chicken scratch. That's the density part of the usage and density conversation. So residential only. One of the objections over here in my mini notes is you can't make a 4-lane highway rural. I agree. But I can stop the bleeding, hopefully, because the town has said, stop the bleeding. For 17 years, they've said, stop the bleeding.
Both big home values of those two different products.
Right. So supply and demand is proven to us. I'm sorry? Right. Right. So the supply and demand has shown us that they're not drastically different. Did you ever think Mills River Crossing was sell for $1.3 million, $1.4 million? It blew my mind. So that's a supply and demand answer that I can't argue. Do I think they're worth that? Yeah, I have to acknowledge that 200 people can't be wrong, or maybe they could.
Well,
But I want to answer Jerry's question. It's a good one. So what happens to our values? They don't come down. They don't go up as much as you might think having a little larger lot. It's more of the community. Mayor Gonson put you on the spot. You don't need to say anything, but the other night you asked the question, what do we want our town to look like? This is a huge, huge part of that answer, no matter what your answer is, or in between, usage and density.
and it has been for quite a while.
Thanks for putting that up there, Kevin.
Mike, if we add, I've asked you this question, but if we add, and I don't know the answer actually, because you told me, but I had 2 different things. Anyway, if we add a,
Sorry, there you go. You can go back to that one, Kevin. I did find, that was my finding for Mills River Crossing of exactly 9 homes on 6.2 acres. That is Mills River.
That's
Crossing.
impressive.
You think I was exaggerating? Those houses aren't what I put, Jerry. I put average size homes. These, what are they, 3,800 square foot and 3-car garages? They're insane, massive portion. So I use average real homes. That's not what's happening. That's what's happening. It's even worse than my thought.
Would we have I asked you this question but would we have the ability to, it's a 2-part question. So could we add a text amendment? I'll ask the second one first, actually. Can we add a text amendment to the rural residential zone, even though it's not applied anywhere yet? Recommend it to council and then have council vote on something?
Yes.
Okay, so that doesn't delay anything. We don't have to have a public hearing for a text amendment or anything like that. I mean,
No. Oh, sorry. Yeah, as part of the normal text amendment process, when it gets to council, there would have to be a public hearing on that change to rural
Okay.
residential. Yes.
okay, all right, that's fine. But if we haven't had a public hearing yet, that could be included.
Yeah, and it can
in
be
that.
done concurrently in a way with the rezoning, as long as the district change is adopted. Well, actually, that's not true. Again, you could rezone to rural residential and change the district in a text amendment after the fact, or you could do it the other way around, or you could do it concurrently, where in one night, the public hearing for the text amendment is considered right before the public hearing for the rezoning. So when it's applied, it's that updated version.
So we have the opportunity to make
Yeah, well, since there
residential.
hasn't been the public hearing from council yet, I mean, I don't know if that confuses things or whatever, but I think which is the first question, which may clarify that is, and we talked about this, the ability to say, within rural residential that minor subdivisions, major subdivisions have minimum lot sizes of 1.5 acres, but family subdivisions do not have a minimum. And that would be a text amendment that I would recommend, which alleviates a lot of concern for longtime residents of Mills River. I know there was some question about that, but that was my question. Could we add that as a text amendment to that and have it all done at one time? So,
It would have to be done to the subdivision code separately. So the best legal way to do it would basically be to exempt family subdivisions from minimum lot size requirements and then set a new standard for them in the subdivision code applicable across the whole town.
Lisa, if you're in charge of notes, that's family subdivisions.
Mayor Gotts.
I don't know
so,
what
but
you
we,
mean,
could- but one last thought, and that is, we can do this concurrently, or we could do this after the adoption or before, obviously, and have separate public hearings, but.
Correct, and it just gets complicated with minimum
Yeah.
lot sizes, because you either have to have them all in by zoning district, or you have to have them all
by-
in the subdivision code. So the best way I thought to address that would be to basically exempt all family subdivisions. So the zoning district doesn't point to any requirement for them, and then move that to the subdivision code and have a different standard.
Yeah, and I just think that's an important thing to do however we do it, because I think that alleviates a lot of concern, for folks who've been here for generations. And we have little third generations running around right now. And so I would like to see that happen at some point. How we do it, I want to do it the most efficient way and the least delay. So, sorry, Mayor. go ahead.
So going back to '07, I was on council. The steering of that decision to leave it alone was basically from the health department standpoint. Back then, nobody was getting their septics and all engineered. It was going through the county. Everybody that lives here knows it's hard to get septic up at creek bottom. And a lot of that land has got pipe clay and stuff about that far in the ground. But these engineers, and I use them, but they'll get you one if you need one. I'm just saying it. Back then, that was the controlling factor. And water on the 280 side, once you get above where I live, Jerry lives, a bunch of us live, once you get up on a mountain, water's hard to come by. So council then said, well, it's controlling itself right now. And to be honest with you, the citizens up there never wanted to be in town to start with. When we first, and we're talking about '07.
Yeah.
Town went in '04.
Yeah.
So that was a big, if we stirred that too hard, we was gonna get a lot of kickback. But them 20-something people that or homes I've been to, and I've talked to more than 27 people, I've been to 27 homes, or it's along that 280 corridor. We're talking about these same people. And it's not 100% that they want to see this, but it's overwhelming, and I'll leave it at that as to where it's at. But that was what steered that at that time for our council, was the hearing the uproar, why are you messing with us? We didn't want to be in town to start with. And then we had an out. The health department wasn't just perking every little piece of property. It was taken in some places. I got called in it. I bought 5 acres and could only put 2 houses on 5 acres on that 280 corridor.
Yeah.
And I had bigger plans. We wouldn't perk. So it cost me money. But from a health standpoint, and the mayor looking at the residents here, if the county won't pass it, should we have it? They're educated too, I'm looking after us again from a safety standpoint. That's why I'm up here right now. If the county wouldn't pass it and still won't pass them today, in a lot of cases, even though generations of different county engineers has come along and they look at stuff a little different, a lot of this land still won't perk without an engineer.
Right.
So I'll leave it at that.
I'll add to that, the engineers, I think that the engineers are doing things very differently. I mean, they're doing as drastic as drip systems for 50 grand, Shannon. And relative to the $1.3 million, if you guys don't know, Mike can explain it better than me if it's needed. Mills River Crossing doesn't have a septic system in every yard. So if you don't know, that big green space down by the park, it's a bunch of septic fields. So there's ways around it. There's communities in town that have worked around that and have their own on-site systems for hundreds of homes. There are workarounds with the health department and technology and the abundance of soil engineers that we now have that are working, collaborating to get those big developers, those 200 and 300 and 400 homes they want. These costs are fractional for the amounts that the 1.3 they're selling for. Shannon, if I'm wrong on any of that, please correct
No,
me.
I will add this. Remember, if you have an engineered system, I have one myself. What happens when our engineers retire, die out? Guess who it gets kicked back to? The county. And they do not have to approve your repair. Just keep that in mind. You are not guaranteed anything but what you got. So everyone living in Mills River Crossing on these engineered system, one of these days, probably not in our lifetime, but one of these days, they're gonna have to hunt another engineer to make this happen because the county says they're not gonna fool with them. They're not even gonna take responsibility of it. Okay,
Yep. Little in the weeds there, but they actually come back and inspect in some cases once a year for some of these systems. But what I think I would really like everyone to hear from that is if we can't stop sewer from coming down there, which I don't think we're going to be able to, none of that matters. It's all hell's going to break loose. Look at Taproot Dairy. Look at Riverstone. Look at Cantrell Hills. If you've been up in that part, D.R. Horton and Windsor Autry will come in and buy these. They won't be $1.3 million homes, thankfully, but they'll be more dense, even more dense. So that's one of the bigger objections we've gotten is the utilities. They aren't there. That's why we should do this now before it is there, is make the people's voices match up now while we can, because as soon as that goes in, all it takes is one big company that needs a fill in the blank down south into town, and they're willing to run that sewer line themselves. You don't think they want other people to piggyback on it to alleviate their costs? That one person coming into town with the pocketbook that says, fine with me, that's where the rest of us pay on this.
We still haven't addressed A or B yet, but
What do we mix this?
It's a discussion night, I believe.
I think
It's
tonight
not-
is just discussion.
What we want to do though.
Yeah.
No, I think the question was, do you
I
want
agree.
to
Sorry
send
about
something
that.
different to council than we've already sent to them that was sent unanimously?
Well, let's get definitive. It was sent back to the planning board, correct? Is that Councilwoman Good?
Not by motion, so
Not
we don't
by
have to
motion.
resend anything back.
So it was never officially sent back. But there are things we could do that would help it.
ask by at least one council member for y'all to take one last look at the corridor situation. This what my understanding.
And that's,
We all got some of the concerns that y'all had, but we figured we could deal with them with text amendments and all. But we just want to make sure before it goes to public hearing and the cost of taking it to public hearing, that's the way we're going to take it. Just give y'all one more chance. If you have any doubt before we set it for public hearing, then I would assume after it goes back, we'll make a decision on the date and take it and then see what everybody says at public hearing.
The greatest opposition is when the people in the intersections along the corridors that not want to have commercial business in those areas.
It don't necessarily seem to be that way. They're just kind of scattered out.
Well, the town's not, the people we've spoken with haven't been 100%. The town council wasn't 100%. So I believe Councilman Young's comments were, I'd like to see business down the corridor within X number of feet of 280. Specifically, that's what he said. He's listening right now. I don't know if he can email and correct me, but I believe that's what was said. As Mayor Gonsa said, at least one council member felt that way. 2 did not. We only had 4 at the last meeting.
And it was hard for us to make a decision to go to public hearing with only 4.
That was part of
But
the,
it's a still a tough spot.
I would suggest we leave what we've put there because it matches the future land use map as closely as possible. And if you'd like to take a formal or informal vote on whether we want to leave that the way it is for them to go to the next step, which is the most critical, by the way, by far the most critical, the public hearing. I want them to get to that public hearing. As was clarified the other night, that's not a decision meeting. That's an information gathering meeting. And it's going to be the most critical step in this entire process. And we can speak there as private citizens too.
And then the earliest that can happen
Late
Probably
October was
not
the
in
first
October.
date, I believe.
is that,
Yeah, from this point, what about a mail or anything like that? Can you do something like that? 'Cause
we will. Yes, sir. It's my understanding that we,
Spending up like night and day. That'd be like Tom Moore. You couldn't eat Tom Moore.
yeah,
The way it is. I mean,
it's the way, it's the way it is.
Yeah. Well, we weren't in a position to spend a bunch of money last time, but I feel merits some expense.
Counselor. Mr. Malcheck to at least mail out to the citizens that live in an area that we're going to be affected directly.
Kevin, could you bring some batteries?
No, it didn't die. It just,
Never mind.
Okay,
He said it
and-
died.
And
I thought
to
it
help
died.
alleviate some of the concerns, if we address it as part of the rural residential, establish exempt this family subdivisions. That alleviates a concern. And then non-conforming uses, if we're able to put some sort of protection beyond just it's non-conforming. I mean, if someone if it's damaged and they have to rebuild, or, even a reasonable expansion, 10, 20%, something like that, if we're comfortable with that, to protect those non-conforming uses.
And
So
I
the
think
people
those are
don't feel like they're going to lose their business because this changes.
And those are important, but I don't want to
Yes,
delay the
Mr. Foster.
process when it can be handled beyond that, which is what we've talked about. And
I
And-
think as big a deal as this is, the citizens that really have any concern at all about it are going to come and speak. That's why I felt like we needed a facility as big as at least the auditorium.
Yeah, I agree.
At an elementary school. West would have probably been a bigger facility to have it, but I figure we get a better turnout right here locally.
In Mills River.
Right.
Procedurally, Mayor Gonzalez, after that hearing, you could send it back to us with recommendation. You make those changes to proceed without coming back to us, or does that depend?
It depends. Reason being is because just like how that lady at our joint meeting come up with, hey, I really hadn't heard anybody say, you own 6 acres and your house is in the back. Even dividing it up, you can't put them in front of what's already there. Is that a possibility? So I'm afraid that somebody's gonna come up with something great like that we've not thought about at all, that needs to be addressed. And we're gonna hear it in this public, comment of this public hearing. We're gonna need to address it before we vote on it.
I think that's great. I think that's exactly how it should.
And
Well,
we
but I-
might be able to text amendment later, but if it's something crazy that we just hadn't thought of, that's going to affect us tremendously, then I'd want opportunity to.
With that said, I go back to the future language. We have aligned with it, and that's what we presented for that reason. And I
And-
feel like it should stay in front of the town council that way. And this hearing needs to be we can't look back 17 years from now. Look at those minutes, this moron said 17 years ago, and they did nothing.
took up 75%
So-
of the comments.
So the action would be is that council would conceivably approve the rezoning to rural residential, and then text amendments to rural residential would protect the ones that need to be protected and allow the things that we didn't realize need to be allowed.
But that would be an ongoing process for years. So,
But
and that's the way,
some of those-
that's the way it should work, right? Yeah. I mean, there would be
And
something we
even that
overlooked. yeah.
night, I mean, between now and that public hearing, we're gonna have another planning board meeting. And we I don't know if we would have time as a planning board to discuss a text amendment and get that in, so that when you all are voting on rural residential, it's the best rural residential we can send you. at the
Once
time.
he's sent out notice, we can't do anything. We're on pause until we can't change anything that.
A separate public hearing on its own.
Right.
It would be a separate, it could, okay, I mean,
Yeah, so even if we did it the same night, it would be a separate. on-
sure, you'd be closing this public hearing and then opening a new.
Is we know that it's coming and it's gonna be right when we get each one of these tax amendments, I'm sitting here and I'm hearing no lot size limitation on family. I'm not
I don't know, we need to think about that.
Well, it's still got to be the 3/4.
Yeah, well, that's what I meant, yeah.
Yeah,
Change that, because they're gonna need it for well.
you need it for septic anyway.
Yeah.
But the important thing is that someone who has 2 acres and 2 children and decide to split that up, or in their will, you know, at my death, each get half. We want to protect that. We don't want someone to, you know, not lose, or, you know, to lose that. Okay.
I say get it in front of the town. There's gonna be no shortage of opinions, and I am excited about hearing them.
But I just want to make sure they know that it's an ongoing issue that we can address. Let's implement it and then continue to perfect it.
I put that on the mayor to explain and set the tone properly.
Try my best.
There you
Yeah.
go.
I'm confident. That's the least of my worries.
Brian will write it all out for you.
No,
Phil.
Lisa's in charge of notes this week.
Well, thanks. Mr.
And I
Costa.
have one question, a little off topic, but we have this public hearing at the school. Got all the experts here, technical and everything. Are we going to be able to stream that also?
We don't know that yet.
I didn't know if they had facilities.
Yeah, I don't know if we will be able to stream it, but they will have some AV capabilities. So
It
at
will be
least people
recorded.
there
At least.
can see stuff on the screen, and yeah, we can always record it and post after the fact. It's just probably just gonna be one camera.
Okay. That's how they go.
Okay. Well, thanks, everyone. Thank
Ms.
you for your
Good, I hope you think
comments.
we did
I
our
think we've
homework.
had
Yeah.
a good discussion.
That's what I was looking for. Awesome.
Yeah, you know, my Air Force time, we always used to say, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Of course, I'm an engineer, so I love fixing things that aren't broke.
Do you have an analogy for that you?
I do.
Entertain
If
us?
the landing
it's
gear
not
is
the
stuck
cat
down,
bucket
leave
either.
it down.
That's scary.
So, but you know, it's all about trying to make it do the best we can. And I don't know of anyone who says Mills River mixed use is not broken. You know, I don't know if anyone would really and truly want what is allowed under Mills River.
Oh, I
mixed
know
use.
some LLCs who think that.
That's right. That's right. So,
Chair, if we're moving on, I have one quick thing. If Kevin could put that last slide up there of the agenda that you, if you're familiar with that. If you guys didn't notice, the town manager asked that the town council change up their agenda. Has he got that, Mike, or are we stuck? He doesn't know. Okay. So Matt asked that they front load the agenda with council comments and staff comments. I immediately called up. Well, that's not true. James Cantrell was out mowing my hay. I ran out to James and said, "What happened there?" I said, "Is someone resigning or something?" I said, "What's going on?" Because something's different. He explained why Matt wanted that, and I totally agree with it. So it was put in the staff update, in this case, the council update, at the front of it for people who are here in person, people watching online that don't 3 hours and hear our staff updates, miss staff updates. So I thought that was actually a no-brainer. I have to assume the mayor agreed with it because it changed, and I would like to, Michael's putting up an example agenda here. I'd like to, make a motion that we change our board's agenda to mirror that more, to give staff the opportunity to speak up front.
I will just say before we make that official, staff does need to look into how the charter will impact that, because there were some questions in the planning board charter. It says the planning board shall follow this order of business, and there's it generally follows, I mean, this new format generally follows it. But it's a little bit out of order, so we'll just need to check with the town clerk about that.
Contingent upon confirmation that we can implement as shown.
I just wanted to note that, yeah, that
and
That was a lot of big words,
You're
man.
getting good at this.
in a meeting less
No
than
second,
3
no
hours,
second.
I would also invite the public to come up and speak again.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you sit through a meeting and you hear things you just really want to say something about.
And that's
And
something
I want
that,
you to have that
I love
opportunity.
that. Yeah.
So, in future meetings, I would like for y'all to, I want you to be heard. I mean, it does you no good to come in here and have something you really want to say and not have the opportunity to share that. So thanks for being here. This,
Any questions on that from or
Is there board consensus to?
I
at
think
least
it's a great
explore
idea
that?
if it's
Okay.
possible.
We'll look into that. for you.
You need a motion.
I was being facetious
need-
about the
you-
motion. If you
no.
actually need one, that's fine. Okay, no. okay,
I think you
no.
got consensus. So next item, staff update.
I said this at the council
I say
meeting.
none is an acceptable answer, but
None is acceptable, but because we got a bunch of people here
Sure.
tonight, the townhomes on Jeffress Road are gonna start building soon. So you'll see some construction traffic there. If you have concerns, call staff at town hall. We have a direct line to the developer.
Or the
Great,
mayor
thank
in the
you.
grocery store.
Yeah,
That's right.
I just gotta say, which grocery store he's going.
you see him, yeah.
Why taking this long before they start?
I don't know, and I kind of made fun of that in the council meeting because I feel like I announced this like 4 months ago and nothing's happened. But they did just email me last week and said it's happening this time, so I'm reporting that.
Good. Okay. Well, I would like to take an opportunity to thank the staff. Town of Mills River has an amazing staff. We are
Absolutely.
truly blessed. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for being here. Also, the planning board, I'd like to thank you. Thanks for what you do. Thank you for giving up your evening to be here. And our neighbors and friends have shown up tonight. Thank you. That being said, if someone should wish,
I make a motion.
okay, everyone talk at once. All right, Mr. Foster in a second, Ms. Marino, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.